and then we'll go forward with the vote on the decision. So this is a decision for a 2-lot subdivision, minor subdivision in the town of Rochester. It's on 85 DeWitt Road. It has the appropriate amount of acreage available for both of the lots. There was no construction here. It was two sets of houses with various outhouses, and a subdivision line was being drawn down the middle, now making it into from 1 lot to 2 lots with existing houses, septic, and wells on both lots. So as the decision says on page 2, we opened the public hearing at the April 28th meeting. We made the finding or determination of significance, and we determined it to be negative. We left the public hearing open, and we reconvened the public hearing tonight. And then we just closed the public hearing a few minutes ago. So the general conditions are the usual general conditions in terms of paying all your fees. And the specific conditions, Terry, the only specific conditions are on page 4. All surveyors and engineers' notes on final map submitted must be followed in the field. The applicant shall present a final subdivision plat for signature, you know that. And the applicant shall present an updated road maintenance agreement for review and acceptance by the town prior to the plat signature by the planning board chair. We had that tonight from Terry. So I'll take care of that, getting them in front of the town board, get them to accept it. And this final subdivision approval expires 180 days from the approval date, which will be tonight, assuming we approve this. This period may be extended for 2 additional 90-day periods upon application to and approval by the town of Rochester Planning Board. So I'll jump down to the words draft resolution was prepared by the chairman and or the town planner, was read and discussed as needed by the planning board in a public meeting at the time and place of adoption. I'll entertain a motion to approve this. Hans made the motion to approve.
I'll second.
Peter seconded. Everybody in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Chair is in favor, so 6 ayes, no nays, no abstentions. I think we're done.
All right.
You have your approval, Terry.
Yeah.
I'll get a new one of these with that adjustment made to the date. If you could just get me bring up the RM. And
Thank you very much.
you're welcome, thank you.
Very welcome.
Send it.
Do I trust him with it?
Right.
What's that?
With it.
Just
How are
send it to
you?
you and Robin right now.
That's great. Okay.
You can sit in.
Yeah.
I'll keep my eye on it. I'm gonna keep my eye on it.
So Robert, you hold on to the RMA, and here's the draft decision. Dave is gonna send us the final one with the change, and we'll talk about it tomorrow.
Perfect.
Okay. Okay, next on the agenda, Terry Ringler. Green Revocable Trust. So there are old maps there for this project. And if you remember last time we went through,
There's a new set that was submitted.
and then maybe that is the new set.
That has your,
What's the date on that, Jennifer?
November 20th?
no,
May 13th.
revised on May 13th.
Revision date.
There's revision, next folder,
Okay, May 13th. That's the latest.
bottom line.
Yeah. All right, so you have the latest and greatest.
We kept them together.
We did get from Mr. Ringler on May 13th, it's in your folder. A request for a waiver. And Dave Church went through it and submitted a email to us dated May 15th, in which he indicated, I'll read it. At your request, I review the waiver request submitted by the applicant on May 13th. The waiver request seeking relief from the town code 125-12A now seems complete and reasonable. The planning board can proceed to review and vote on the request. The planning board will need to approve a resolution with reasoning and any conditions with findings that an unreasonable restriction will result from strict compliance and all the requirements are clearly not applicable. In particular, reasoning can be based on the explanation from the May 13th letter from Terry Ringlet. So in effect, we're fine. We just need to vote on, we need to accept this waiver
We've
request.
been doing them separately. The waivers from the decisions,
Okay, so we'll vote on a waiver
what you've been doing.
separately. So I'll entertain a motion to accept the request for a waiver from section 125-12A. Who wants to make that motion?
I'll make the motion.
Peter made the motion. This has to do with the waiver, Rob. Okay,
Second it.
Helena seconds it. All in favor?
Aye.
I vote aye, so 6-0. So, Harry, we're in good shape in terms of the waiver. And, does the board have any comments on anything? Okay, there being none, I'll entertain a motion to, set the public hearing.
I'll make a motion.
Jennifer makes the motion for the public hearing. Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Dave Roberts seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and we'll set that for June 9th. So it'll be in our next meeting. Okay,
There was one thing that I saw, I think it was on the application, Terry, just a road was misspelled. I think it's on the application is spelled.
I think that was the original application. I have dyslexia and sometimes I write things a little differently. So,
Yeah,
but on the map, it's right, and on the amended application. it was-
yeah, I just had a note that I saw it a couple places, so,
Yeah, it was me.
okay.
Don't look too closely at everything.
Get my red pencil out.
Oh, boy. You know, you're not allowed to do that anymore. It's a sign of aggression from the supervisor.
Right?
I got told.
Red pen.
I'm still gonna use a red pen.
I
can't
know.
help
I know, I
myself.
still do too.
I'm harassable.
And I'm not being aggressive, it's just, I just wanted your attention to it.
I don't have it here. I switched the paint.
Okay, so you're all set.
Thank you.
I'm glad the folder was getting really big. So we'll see you on June 9th.
Good night.
And Dave, we'll just need the
Yeah,
decision and we'll talk about the various things that need to go onto the map. Thank you, Dave. Who's next? Bill, we're skipping over the Lewis project. The next project is Nolan and Palmer. Mr. Attorney, have you found anything about the extensions for the?
I have.
Okay, so, yeah, let's go back to what was brought up before. Where I mentioned that, Attorney Moriello is gonna be here at our next meeting asking for an extension to the approval for Accord Greenery. And I made the statement that he was asking for 2 years, better known as 4 6-month waivers. What say you? What say you?
Well, first, let me read it so everybody knows what we're talking about and then make our own sort of joint decision. What I say is that it's ambiguous and I believe it can be read either way. This is section 140-52, so this is in the zoning code, this is in the administration section. It's entitled Effect of Site Plan and Special Use Approval. This is paragraph B, so 140-52B, those of you keeping score at home. The first 3 sentences read as follows. The site plan approval and/or special use permit shall remain effective as an authorization to establish the use for a maximum of 1 year from the date of approval. Effective for a maximum of 1 year. Second sentence. The planning board shall have the authority to grant an extension within the 1 year time frame in writing, provided the applicant has diligently pursued the implementation of the plans, period. Third sentence. Such extensions shall be granted in 6-month increments up to a maximum of 4. So,
That's
we-
pretty clear.
what do you think?
I think you have to do 6-month
Well-
increments. You can't do it all at once.
An extension.
Well, let's break it down a little for those grammarians among us. and that's
So
what
you're
I
gonna
do.
become a mathematician tonight? or
No, I'm gonna
just-
become a grammarian, you have to suffer through it. To, planning board shall have the authority to grant an extension, I think that Dave Roberts caught this, within the 1 year time frame. So you have the authority to grant an extension. Such extension shall be granted in 6-month increments up to a maximum of 4. So there's 2 ways to look at that. One is that the increments that they're talking about are actually the extensions themselves, and you can grant 4 of them. However, the other way to look at it is that you get to grant an extension within the 1 year time frame, and the measurement of that extension, and this is a little bit odd, this is could be very, the measurement of that extension must be in 6-month increments. So in other words, one way to look at it is that it's one extension that you can grant for 6 months or 12 months or 18 months or 24 months. And in my view, you can do it either way, grammatically correct. In fact, the second way is as equally as good as the first, and therefore, if that's what Moriel wants, I think the board is okay in doing it. However, having said that, that's just my grammatical take on it, and the board is absolutely free to make its own grammatical interpretation.
Okay, so when he comes in next month, you have a lot to chew on. All the grammarians in the room, and we'll make a decision at that point in time. Thanks, Nick. All right. Bill,
Yeah,
why are you here?
so first off, on the agenda, you've got, the next up would be the Lewis subdivision. And as you know, we discussed, I got some issues with that we're still wrestling with. The request that we just table that for tonight
That's fine.
and move on to the next on the agenda, which is the Palmer Smith subdivision.
Yep. I'm all ears.
So, yeah, we've got, I don't remember exactly what it was that we were making revisions to from the last time, but I know, we've got, the proposed driveway showing in there, as relocated on the ground, the little squiggles to get around the trees. The other, primary issue was, met with the kind of highway department to review the location of the proposed driveway. I said had a great spot for it, visibility was terrific, either direct further up one way or the other, would be worse, so that's prime location for that, so he's, good with that. So,
Okay, Bill, would you get a letter to that effect from the highway superintendent for us?
yeah,
Does the board have any comments? If you remember, this was the one which fell into that similar category to the Ringler project just before, where we had prime farmland, and there were rules around what percentage of the property that's being built on could be prime farmland. So we suggested that they rejiggle the map. Because the problem lot was lot number 2 in the back that had the predominant amount of prime farmland.
Guess we're going further down.
So they did that. If you remember, that house on the second lot was all the way down in the corner. There was a very long driveway with an easement on it. So they adjusted all that as we requested and suggested. And so you see a new map in front of you that, in my mind, satisfies the requirement in that section of the code. What I don't know, Dave Church, is do we have to, are they still somewhat in violation of that number? And we have to do a waiver, or are we fine? And
Have to do. You'll have to do a waiver for insufficient frontage on the rear lot.
okay,
I think you're okay otherwise.
okay,
We had met with the 2 gentlemen here and batted around some design alternatives. You recall the board had issues with houses one in the rear in particular plopping down in the middle of the prime farmland, which is a new provision in the code. So it kind of came as a surprise to some of these applicants. And the long drive. So they've redesigned to preserve the most of the prime farmland in the back and shorten the drive. While accommodating some mature trees, right, that are on the property.
correct. All right, so we do need a waiver, but it wasn't for what I thought. It's a waiver for the insufficient road frontage for the back lot, and that we're allowed to approve a waiver of that sort for 2 lots. So the 1 lot up front qualifies, it's fine. And we can go up to 2 additional lots where we waive the sufficiency of the lot of the road frontage. I'm okay, it's only 1 that we're gonna waive, so I'm fine with that. But I want to hear from the board if you have any questions about the map.
Items, but I feel like maybe my notes didn't save, so please tell me if I'm off base here. There were a couple of things that were flagged in the mapper, the PAF mapper. There was
There was
Bald Eagle.
wetlands up front.
so it was confirming that there were no streams or wetlands and if so, added to the maps to confirm that. And it was flagged for bald eagle.
I can't hear you, sorry.
It's
Jen.
flagged for bald eagle and northern longleaf bat. And I think we talked about the bats just have to be, the tree cutting window just has to be added as a condition,
Right,
but I don't know if we need anything for the bald eagles.
I think the bald eagle, we decided that, Bill, you were going to send me a letter, very cool,
Provide you with basically the same letter that we did for Patinkin.
because the
Yes.
potential bald eagle nesting site is the same one we dealt with another project.
Right. Okay, distance away from it.
So Jennifer, I'm glad you reminded me.
But we haven't gotten it.
We haven't got that letter yet. We need a letter from you, Bill.
Okay.
Okay,
Um,
so the bat, you have to make notations on the map
Time of year restriction.
for the time of year. Bill, you're familiar with that, right?
Yeah, the old bat note.
and then I had fire review, did it go for the driveway?
I don't know if it did, because it would go to Mike, Panic.
Well, the waiver for the shared drive, your code said has to be reviewed by highway. So we went that far, right?
Well, I think the code actually says we have to waive it first. If we waive it, then we submit it to the highway superintendent for him to say, okay. But if we say no, then it stops right there.
Because it's a county road.
Right.
Right, no matter what you say, that. Yeah, for better or worse, my read of the code says no matter whether it's whatever kind of road it's on, the highway superintendent's still supposed to review it if it's insufficient road frontage. He doesn't, in this case, he doesn't have to grant approval to work in the town right away, because it's not a town right away.
Okay, but if we approve the waiver, we're approving the waiver, we still have to go to the town highway superintendent?
It's part of the waiver, is an expectation of the highway superintendent's okay with it.
Okay, and if we said no to the waiver, then we don't, obviously we're not.
Well, then if you said no to the waiver, we'd be looking at a redesign.
Okay, perfect. Hold that thought. Jennifer, you have anything else?
And there's no issue, there's no, the conservation subdivision thing went away because of the redesign, right?
Right.
That's great,
Which you can also waive, there's just no precedent that you've ever done that.
or, but, so then we just need to do a waiver for the frontage that we just talked about.
Right.
And then does the map? Is there a note on the map that says how much of each lot is prime farmland?
Yes.
Okay, that's it, obviously, let us know.
Okay,
I have a question, is
Go ahead,
there a
Peter.
current deed? The deed that we have is from Wildlands to Gillette. Is there another, do we need another deed?
the deed we have is from Gillette. I thought you sent us a deed of sale from Gillette to Nolan Palmer Smith. Bill? You did buy it.
Listed in a transmittal.
Mr. Nolan, you, I know last time we talked about you had already purchased it.
I have the deed here. If you don't have it yet, I'll send it right over tomorrow.
Is it in the Google Drive?
The only one that's in there is from
Gillette,
the Wildlands.
Wildlands,
Gillette.
you're right.
So just a piece of paper.
It's referenced on the map, but I'll send you over that,
all right, so we need the new one.
first thing. Morning, got it right here.
Okay, new deed, all right, so let's do this, anything else? Anything else? So I'll entertain a motion to waive the requirement for the appropriate road frontage, which we will then, if it's approved, we will then need to send to the highway superintendent for him to confirm. So I'll make that motion. Or entertain the motion.
I'll make the motion.
Dave Roberts will make the motion. Hans seconding it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 6-0. Okay, so Bill, you're gonna get us the bald eagle note. You're gonna make sure that we have the bat notations, the bat note. We took care of the waiver for insufficient road frontage. And we need the newest deed showing the transfer from Gillette to Nolan Palmer Smith or Smith Palmer.
Do we get a letter from the fire department driveway?
You have to ask for a request and then they'll say, it usually says you have to conform to the code, fire code for driveway construction. And then when it's done, they
Oh,
inspect it.
okay, all right.
Yeah,
That's what they've been doing.
Yeah.
Okay, I wasn't sure.
Unless it's something
Length.
major like with,
I don't think the length triggers anything right there for. Yeah. I
Yeah,
think so.
okay.
okay. So I think we can set a public hearing. And I'll entertain a motion. I'm suggesting we set the public hearing for also for June 9th. We're gonna have a busy day with public hearings.
I make a motion to open them.
Helena makes the motion.
I'll second.
Peter seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 6-0. So Bill, you have some things to get to us in the next week and a half-ish. It won't hold up the public hearing, but you have a public hearing for June 9th.
Very good, thank you.
Okay.
Just like to make a note that the applicant got voted on the school board this week, is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Sir.
Yeah, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Yeah, thank you very much. Exactly. Yeah, thank you. That kind of thing.
You could come down and she can come down and commiserate with us whenever she wants to.
All right, thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Yes.
Was the public hearing? Little comments.
No, I'd rather You know what, yeah, do the decision.
All right.
All right.
And
Do it.
these things we have talked about.
What we do it. Okay, yeah, let's do it. Okay, Accord Social. I got a lot to talk about. Okay. Caleb, I'll let you go first. And good evening, ladies.
We recommitted plans to address the SWIP comments by Greg Volner with the new revised SWIP. We also, this is the last meeting, we finished the water testing. And we got a report which went really well, and then just in the last yesterday, we got retested for the Keller and turbidity, and it came back really well, good, so we're underneath the test.
So the turbidity, yes, us.
Yes, they're both down.
Okay, great.
It had coliform in the original test, right?
Yes,
So that,
that would have, with the, still have to get the health department to approve the water system design, and that'll get retested at that point, so we weren't planning on retesting it, this is that'll have to be tested before they go online.
but the color converted, you can't use. it.
Yes,
Awesome.
And then Caleb, also with the testing you did on the neighboring wells, there was no drawdown on any of the neighboring
no,
wells?
there's nothing, we found the well right next, or we tested the, it was monitoring the well on next to that well, and I was kind of surprised we didn't see anything. Any effect in the well that's only like 70 feet away.
Okay. And what about the you also did the test for organic chemicals?
Yeah.
Did you talk about that already?
Yeah, everything was good, everything came
No
out.
organics. Yeah. All right,
There was-
anybody have questions on the
There was
water?
just one observation, the chloride was a little high, but there's nothing you can do about that, that's just more for the applicants that you know that they're pre-corrosion. It's probably because it's right on to right?
All right, Jennifer?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so that takes care of water. The next thing I have is to talk about the SWIP, the SWIP. You want to address that?
Well, we made our response to Greg and he hasn't responded to those comments yet. So we're kind of waiting for him to approve that.
Okay, Greg is supposed to be here at 7:15-ish, so we'll defer that for
I'm
now.
kind of assuming if he didn't write a letter by now, probably wasn't gonna get it today. So,
Okay.
but we're kind of waiting for that comment, but there's nothing that I feel is gonna hold up the process, and hopefully Greg can say the same thing.
We'll wait for him to come
Yeah.
and give comments.
For him to
Okay.
say,
So let's talk about the Ulster County Planning Board's comments. You want to address that, Caleb? There's a letter in the folder, in the Google folder. It's under Ulster County Planning Board comments. And they made 4 comments,
Airport, yeah, it's a little.
and one had to do with, I'll go through them,
You
Caleb.
wanna go through? Okay, yeah.
One of them had to do with access, which they need to make sure they get all the permits from the New York State Department of Transportation in order to do the curb cut, so that's an obvious one that they obviously will do. Ulster County Department of Health, another one, you still have some work to do there, particularly in terms of the coliform counts, and there may be some final things to get the permit from them.
Yeah, we're waiting for them to get a flow confirmation letter so we can complete our application to the DEC. And then it would, most of the time, the DEC will then send it back to Ulster County to actually review the plans, the SWIP itself.
Okay, so there's water, but then there's also the septic, so you're referring to the septic.
Right now, it's the septic is what we're working on, because get that done first, and then the health department will review the fire system as well.
So you're gonna do that?
Yeah.
Sustainability, they talked about in the letter from Ulster County, they talked about recommendation to put panels on the roof to provide added electricity, yada, 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 use what are they called? PTAC units. I call them PTAC units, but the
Heat pumps.
heat pumps, thank you. So what say you about that?
We first of all have every intention of providing the EV charging stations for sure. We intended to do solar. There's a lot up in the air right now with solar funding. With the 30% clean energy credit and when that will be phased out. So we're kind of waiting to see that, but we've been in touch with the solar company. We have a proposal. We'd like to move forward with solar. The lot's going to depend on.
Okay, so let's just go back to the EV chargers. You are doing that?
Yes.
Okay. And then with the panels on the roof, so I think the response to Ulster County would be their intention is to do it, but it's dependent upon the availability of state and federal credits.
Happen, yes.
So Dave, we'll have to note that when we do the decision. Okay.
I'll just note that required modification from Ulster County you've seen before. It doesn't require the applicant to do anything except explore opportunity. So in other words, the requirement is to have a discussion about it.
Okay, we just had that discussion. So we've
But it's the
fulfilled,
point of whether you've met the requirement or not.
well, it said.
You don't have to
explore.
actually construct it to meet that requirement.
What it says is explore opportunities to
explore
incorporate on-roof solar energy into the proposal and use it in concert with heat pumps for HVAC and water heating systems
So I,
as much as possible.
so I think the grammarian would agree that we just explored.
It's, I guess, yeah, I mean, the grammarian should be working for the county at this point because should explore is a very difficult thing to pick. I mean, when we're in the situation where we have to decide whether or not something requires a supermajority, it's really nice to have a black and white thing. So the requirement is that we should explore opportunities to incorporate on-roof solar and use with heat pumps. So I will leave that to you guys to determine.
Does anybody have a
Meant by that.
problem if I simply declare that we just explored it? Everybody okay with that? Okay,
agree.
so you're okay on that one. Talk to me about the photo simulation if they wanted. Dave or Caleb or somebody. Dave, you had an opinion about that?
Well, my opinion based on Caleb's response was it's unnecessary.
Okay,
We have photos, I don't know, whether they're literally photo simulations, we have visual renderings and photo simulations of what's proposed. There's nothing substantially changed. The county essentially asked for updated photo simulations to show what gets built. And
We have diagrams of what's being built from all four sides. If I
well, it's
recall.
again, it's a bit of a language awkward thing. But I don't, I concurred with the applicant's comments, which again, it's up to the board. That it was unnecessary and overly costly to do this again.
I want to be clear with the board, I'm not questioning Dave's judgment. But, and we ran into this, like a year or two ago on, I think it was, at Court Granary. We might disagree with the county's requirement as being not very smart, or even in that case, we thought it was illegal. That doesn't change the fact that they said it, and we are not the county's guardian angel or interpreter or anything like that. They've given us this requirement, so if Dave and the applicant agree that this is not a smart thing to do, that may be the direction we go in, but we need a supermajority in order to approve it. The county has, until and unless the county changes the required modification, that's their ruling.
Okay,
And so if that's where we want to go, that's fine, but you better have 5 votes.
okay, so we're not gonna vote, not
If I
tonight.
may also note, this may have happened before with the county. I do believe that the most recent visual graphics you have do reflect the recent version of the site plan. So something got lost in document translation.
Okay,
They must have focused on an earlier site plan or something.
I don't know.
So those simulations you have do reflect what you're,
How does the board
Reviewing.
feel about the?
but you still need to override, I concur, you need to override.
So
You wanna see it?
So.
You
You
had,
recall they were gonna
Same
try,
ones, are they not? The same ones.
you
you
gave that
recall
to
they were
us.
gonna try to keep the barn, remember? And
Right, but they're not keeping the barn now. But this view is the view without the barn, except for the building is a tiny bit taller because there's a walkout basement on the other side. So there's not this whole big space here, there's just, this is the back. There's a deck up above that's ground level because the ground is so sloped. But this view will be the view basically without the barn. It's essentially the same view from the street. It
Okay,
doesn't-
so those sure look like photo simulations to me. What does the board feel?
I feel very strongly that we should wait.
Anybody else?
I agree.
Jennifer,
I agree.
David?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're not gonna ask you to do that. And what we'll do is when we come to the time for decision,
we need 5 votes.
you guys will advise us as to how to deal with
You
it.
have an elevation from the back of the building, right, showing, yeah, so I think that also provides sufficient information. I'm also thinking about the public hearing. You know, people from the public want to see what the building looks like from the back, at least you have that elevation, so you have enough information so people can understand.
That's a good point. When we do the public hearing, we'll get there in a second. If you can have those kind of visuals.
Yeah.
That we can put on the tables as we usually put maps, have those visuals, that would be real helpful.
So do we have to incorporate any language that they're gonna build as presented? You know, the drawings.
That's in all your resolutions
Yeah,
now.
so, yeah.
Do we need to vote or?
No, we don't vote until we get to the point of
Vote
approval.
on the resolution, but you need 5 votes.
But at the time of the resolution for the, okay. All right, so Ulster County Planning Board, we dealt with that. Greg, you're right on time, 7:15. We were just a little ahead of you. I asked Caleb, what's the deal with the SWIP? And I don't know if you have any other comments. Essentially, are you okay with the SWIP or not?
We're okay with the SWIP. We just have one minor comment, which is on comment number 3. We just want to make sure that it's clear on the plan, the specific limits of the impervious surface.
Gotcha.
So
Okay,
it's just,
so Greg, did you get that to him in writing?
no, I did not. I just got this afternoon. I'll put something, because this
Just a
came
quick-
from the engineer in my office who sent it to me, so I'd rather send it more formally, but all the other comments were.
And Greg, feel free to skip over me, just copy me and send it right to the applicants for speed. Okay, so that takes care of the SWIP. We went through the hydro. Jennifer took your place for that, so we're okay with the hydrology.
Okay.
There are some things that need to be
Well,
done.
the only question I had was the E. coli and the And I know that I saw in the email you said we were
Yeah,
retesting.
we just got his results back yesterday, and both Keller and the Gritty were much lower and below the limits
Okay.
for the zone, and we can provide that.
And the bacteriological and.
Well, if we didn't do the bacteriological, we would still have to do the water design with health department, and we're gonna have to retest prior to doing the work.
Okay.
So, they didn't test it,
Okay,
basically. Russell Mead was,
a lot of times there's contaminants that get in,
Right.
yes,
and so,
introduced during the
and I
process.
know that we have to retest for those prior to opening.
Okay,
Anyway,
yes.
That's kind of where we're.
Okay.
That leaves us with one final item. It's the bonding, which came up probably 2 meetings ago. And the applicant came back to us with some suggestions, and again, this is in your Google file, and it's under a folder of files that says bonding. And essentially what they're asking is to, yeah, they're gonna bond, but principally for the landscaping. And also for the site grading and the drainage ways that they're providing for it. They're going to bond for that. They're asking for us not to ask them to bond for other items, which typically are items that are done when you have a subdivision of many single family homes that are being put up, where roads are going in, sidewalks are going in, lighting structures are going in, all that kind of material, where there's a need to ensure a degree of insurance for whoever buys those homes, that the appurtenances that the required road to get to their house, water system, sewer system, all of that is done. That doesn't apply here. They're putting some of that in, but for their building. And I think I said the last time, I wouldn't necessarily ask them to do that, because in the other case of single family homes, you do it because the town is literally almost becoming the landlord for this project. We're not going to become the landlord for a restaurant should something like that occur, where you don't put it in or you abandon it. You have enough money and time and effort in there. You don't think you're going to abandon it. So I frankly don't think we need a bond to cover those things, but we do need a bond to cover the landscaping. And specifically from our section of our code, it's 140-46. Is it 56? Or, yes, I'm sorry, 56.
140.
No, 140-56. And it's section D. They would like approval to do number 1, 2, and 6. 1 is the site grading, which I think Dave, you brought up last time, to make sure that when they do the grading and everything, that it's left in an appropriate state. And the second thing is the drainage, including the waterways and the conduits that lead from the building, for example, or from the parking lot to the green swales that you're creating. So they're agreeing to do that.
Yeah, no, I think that's okay. I mean, I spoke to that last time. Because
Yeah.
I was just saying, I didn't think in the event that something untoward happens and the project gets held up, you don't want the drainage to be half done and it
It's
impact
spilled out
other properties or
onto other properties.
impact the highway.
Onto 209.
Yeah.
So they're agreeing to do that. I didn't quite get, Michelle, I know you worked on this. I guess the sum total is somewhere in the order of $54,000.
Screw what?
54,000, is that the number?
54 is the grading. I mean, the one thing I would say is that they're mutually exclusive.
I can't hear you.
The grading and the landscaping are mutually exclusive because you wouldn't be putting in landscaping unless you had created the grading.
Okay, so we're okay with what you're requesting. I just want to get an idea of what's the total number.
54,000.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know. And then we just need, I think the code provides for 100 or 120% of whatever the bond has to be 120% of that 54,000. So once you put all that together, now I'll get it to the town and they need to give the final blessing. So you need to show evidence of the bond. You asked to deal with the particular bonding company.
I was gonna get a letter of credit, which was acceptable in the code. A letter of credit rather than a bond is.
Yeah, I'm
okay.
okay with all that. It was a cheaper way of you going about it.
Yeah.
The town wants either letter of credit, a bond from a bail's bondman or whatever, or you put up cash. So the letter of credit is fine.
So
So
now
you
is
need
the
to get-
time to do that.
You need to get me all of that material, that financial material, and attach to it what you have here, and I will get it to the town. Because they have the final say. All of this will take a month or so to get done, but we have time, because we're still not into the public hearing. Everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
I think it does, what, I don't know, if it's 120 or 125%.
You may be right, it's
125, yeah.
125.
Yeah.
I misspoke. 125. Okay, anybody have anything else on this project?
No?
I just want to compliment everybody on Caleb, the ladies. Everything we've asked for, I know it's been a fairly expensive endeavor on your part. But you've done everything we've asked for, and it looks to me to be a real quality project, so I'm sure you're anxious to get a spade in the ground.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, I'd like to set the public hearing.
Yeah.
And I'd like to set it again for June 9th. We're gonna have business.
It's gonna be a marathon.
set the public hearing for June 9th.
A second.
That's gonna be my input for tonight.
Who's, you have to be here. Did you make the motion?
Yes, I made the motion.
Helena made the motion.
Yep.
Peter did the second. All in favor? I agree, so it's 6-0. So unless you guys have something else,
Great, thank you.
okay?
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah.
A well-oiled effort by the three of you, so
Yes.
Thank you very much.
thank you.
Thank you.
I wish we had project.
Bonding free before that.
Okay, I'm gonna ask that we take a brief break. Is that okay? And we have next up the Granite, and then Rav Tom, better known as Pine Grove, and then Ridgefield Realty. So we'll take a 10-minute break. And we'll come back.
She said.
Scott, if you wanna approach the bench, I mean, the board.
Yeah.
Certainly have this.
I think
It's like, I don't want
I'm not sure they're all PDFs, they're like, but But Rick's got a box, these things just. This is that side. And so one, look at one side.
I know it does shoot in this case. A little burned out.
I didn't wanna go stop.
No one's assaulted anybody yet. You've
been doing
been in a room for almost an hour. You've been in a room for almost an hour. No one's.
Yeah, sometimes they're right now.
What did you do since we sat here?
So tonight, I don't know, you know, it doesn't pass the point where check music for 20 minutes.
My wife's a bit of a news junkie, but I can't do it anymore.
I can't do it, I mean, I used to
I listen to NPR in the
listen to
car.
podcasts and all that, I can't do that as well. It's not for exciting.
No.
There are people for 24, 25, 6, you know, for functioning adults, who tend to be out of family life that way. All they've ever known, so. So in terms of political zeitgeist, political norms and how we relate to each other. Like, those things that's in the world, we don't have time and no country, no dignity or, no.
My wife does some work with teenagers in Newburgh. They told me that their news sources,
That's the other, oh, yes.
they know that's all they're getting.
That's right, that's right. We are listening to very, very.
No, it's.
So good, we're just commiserating the age of Trump and what's it like to be.
We're waiting for you, we're waiting for you to insult somebody in the age of Trump. What,
My favorite
as
folks.
you want, I was suggesting.
So we've.
The beloved counselor might want a April month.
Those are.
Did you have more, Rick?
I do.
I'm not sure he wants it though.
Yeah, I have one, that's why I need. Actually, no, I use it, fair printing, things like that. I'm always printing out and paper out.
Yes. I mean, just put them all for print of next time. He's got more.
There's a dead tree.
You can have your own, Dave.
I didn't even punch holes in them.
The new controls.
Throw one ball in the corner, put it back on it.
Our recommendation.
Okay, let's get back together again. By the way, for the board, I have some gifts for you. You have yours, Dave, you don't have one, so here's one for you.
Was that the 240 page?
Yes. There's one for you, Dave Church, you have one. Dave, what you want?
Dave's got
Thanks.
There's-
Be careful what you wish for.
Hans, you need one.
Rick, Rick,
You have one.
Rick, you got enough?
It's 240
Yeah.
pages.
They're really lovely.
I don't like.
This is for Hans.
I much rather. have-
Alina,
How about the-
What? I have one.
you have one?
Review them.
Great,
Beat you.
and there's one for Zorian.
No, I'm not.
Rick, how about the foil?
No, he gave it to me and I.
Foil request.
sat down and
I gave them that. So we're good.
I didn't
And
know.
I have a couple of.
So they have the whole.
Yeah.
Care
Perfect.
with my 9 that long chain.
I did the whole thing.
Easiest thing to do.
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Olson. So what brings you here?
A lot of things.
And the drop.
So obviously you have our recent submission,
Yes.
which is, obviously it's the length big, but there are documents basically that you have requested. It includes the visual analysis, the photo simulations, the photos that were produced as a result of the balloon test that was done on the, I think, the 18th and 19th of April. That's a major part of it. We've given you a revised EAF pursuant to Mr. Church's comments. We have provided you with our consultants' unofficial biological assessment, which is something that they do as part of the NEPA due diligence. Because we're federally licensed under the FCC, we have to comply with NEPA. And that's part of that. So every site we build, we will do this NEPA review.
Why are you calling it an unofficial?
Because they submit that, and they have submitted it to the US Fish and Wildlife. It becomes official basically once the US Fish and Wildlife gives their recommendation. And usually what they do is they concur with it. So in this case, there was the potential for the Indiana bat and the northern long-eared bat, which is a potential pretty much everywhere in Ulster County and Orange County. So the mitigation, to the extent there has to be tree clearing, would be the tree clearing restriction. Only clear the trees when the bats are not roosting, when they're hibernating. In the winter, they go into caves and other areas. They do not stay in the trees. So if we have to take down any trees, then I think there are a few trees that are coming down. The US Fish and Wildlife Service will basically say, don't cut the trees down until November 1st. Or between November 1st and generally the end of March. Which that's when the bats start to come out. There's also, I think, a mono butterfly, but that was determined not to be an issue, if I remember correctly.
Okay, let me just jump in for a minute, then we'll.
Please do.
So if you all recall, back on April 28th, when we last met with Verizon, I had given them a letter with 8 or 9 points in that letter. And I don't know if you were able to pull it up, but it included I was asking for impacts, environmental impacts, commentary on environmental impacts. I obviously asked for the visual assessment. Anything else that they had to say about the RF study that was done by them and also done by
And that's in there.
our consultant. So many of the things that you see in this document are in response. Well, they would have probably done most of it anyway, but in direct response to my request for information. And also indicated to them and gave them copies of letters that we had received. Some major letters that we had received from a representative of a group of homeowners that dealt with environmental issues. And if I recall I'll call it the tome, if you don't mind, the 300-page tome, you address some of those comments specifically, point by point by point. So it's very useful to read that document. Now, here's what Dave Church and myself have talked about, and this is what Dave and I have done with the study. We've broken it up and allocated it to a variety of consultants that will be operating on behalf of the town. So there is an email from Dave dated 5/21, which goes through this, and you may see it in a couple of emails, but essentially we sent certain sections of the document to Matt Allen. If you recall, Matt Allen was our expert for the visual, and asked him to weigh in on and opine on what was given to us by Verizon. We sent the section on the biological material, the environmental material, we sent that to our environmental consultant by the name of Bruce Barber. Some of you know Bruce, he's done some work for us in the past, most recently on the project called Dignified Dwellings. So he'll be looking at that. Then we sent the section having to do with the RF, the radio frequency, and the needs assessment section. We sent that again to Doug Fishman, who originally opined on that material, but we asked him to go through it again for us. And just to make sure that everything is covered and everything is according to Hoyle. And Dave himself, we had a major issue with the EAF, and there were many versions of the EAF because we had asked for changes to it at different points in time. So literally the old EAF that's on the Google Drive, you can pretty much deep six it, and the new EAF, Dave is going through that and analyzing to make sure all of his concerns in terms of the EAF have been addressed. So we have 4 people, Dave, I think that was it, right? Those 4 people, yourself
The
included.
referrals, yes.
So they've all been referred out. We've asked for the information back by June 9th. Not that we're going to review it at that meeting, but we've asked for it by June 9th. I suspect we will get it by that time, although Matt Allen indicated he may have a problem with that because of some personal commitments, but pretty close to that date. So we need all of that material back, and we need it to be digested by the board. We need it to be digested by our planner before we even begin to think about setting a public hearing. I want to have all of that information in. I want to make it available to the public as well, or allow the public to foil for it. And Peter, you may at one point in time may want to talk about what we've tried to do with the Google Drive.
Yeah.
So remind me, we'll get there in a second. So that's what we've done, Scott. I think you know that we copied you on, I believe, what Dave sent out to all of our consultants.
Don't know if I received that.
Dave, could you make sure you send it to him?
Absolutely.
I thought I copied you on it, but
You know what, you could have, I don't recall it, but hopefully it's.
I send them out
Or maybe
all
you do-
hours of the day and morning. Okay, so I think that's all I want to say right now about the document. It's work in progress in terms of analyzing what was presented to us. Do you have anything else in the document?
So one other thing, or maybe 2 other things. One is, we had a conversation about some of the stuff that we had submitted. And based on that conversation, I reached out to the appraiser who has prepared the market study that's in the record. And I asked them just to put together like I'll call it an executive summary a shorter version, non-appraisal language. I don't know if he has the ability to do that, but I should receive that tomorrow, I'm told. It was actually produced much quicker than I thought. So that should be available and I'll submit that once I see it.
Okay,
And
that's,
he's actually gonna add, he said he added a few additional sales that support what he was explaining in the prior report.
so whether we agree or disagree with whatever's written, what I told Scott was, I don't understand what you sent me originally.
Yep.
And
Very technical.
I couldn't understand it in spite of being accused of being a mathematician by my attorney. So I asked Scott to give me something that was digestible. So that's what he's referring to.
Second thing is the noise study. That's been a larger lead time item because we were requested to basically provide the noise that would basically be above what the ambient is. We don't know what the ambient is. It's tough to define it too because.
You take measurements, you go.
Sure,
back-
but when do you take the measurements? Do you take measurements when they're mowing the lawn out there? Because that's part of the
Well,
ambient.
you do.
Well,
It's in the, it's
Yeah.
the NYS DEC guidance.
I hear you.
And it's not an instantaneous
That's-
reading and
yeah.
so you might get 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the evening,
Right.
weekends,
The
whatever,
average.
and then you develop a model, what's.
So we have a consultant that we retained recently. They have to stay on site for at least 24 hours. So that's what they're saying.
Are they camping?
Physically?
Yes, but they don't want to leave the equipment there. They don't want to leave the equipment there.
That's their choice.
I don't know. I haven't communicated with them. Someone else has.
Question, do we know when the generators kick on?
2-3 times. Once, well, they will kick on Tuesday morning, 10 a.m. And they go for about 30 minutes-ish for their routine exercising. And I'll find out whether that's weekly or bi-weekly.
Okay.
They will kick on when the power goes out. And they will stay on until the power is restored.
So. Can it be can these startup of the generators be programmed, let's say that when every other Tuesday, it's at noon time?
Absolutely.
Because, as we are gonna have to look at your noise study, but noon time, a lot of people are out of their houses, et cetera, and that would be a good time to have them kick on. They're not gonna be intrusive. If they're kicking on at 2 o'clock in the morning, you know what I'm saying?
I know what you're saying.
So that's kind of a built-in mitigation perhaps.
Sure, and that's why they would always, on a national level, do it on a Tuesday for whatever reason, they pick Tuesday, but at 10 a.m. Because they think that most people don't to work, but
Yeah.
So we'll look forward to getting that noise study.
yes, I'm
Okay.
hopeful you'll have it before the next.
And then
meeting.
the corollary to what Helena was saying is, if we do get into a co-location scenario, and there'd be 3 more generators, because presumably there's a max of 3 other people, and each one would have their own generator.
Not necessarily. Some use battery backup.
So my only point is, if we do have co-locators, part of whatever decision we do, depending on where we go, we're gonna require that they come in and go through a whole site plan. So I just want to make sure that you realize and tell them, we're gonna want to know what they're using. It needs to be in accordance with the standards that you've set or that we've set with you in terms of noise.
Yes.
Can't go off at the same time because the multiplication of the generators at the same time would create more noise than
Sure.
probably would be acceptable. So just keep that in the back of your mind. The other item that I noted was when I spoke to Dan. Or I think it was Dan, and this was quite a few months ago. The fencing around this 50 by 50 structure or containment area where the radio tower goes.
Yes.
It needs to shield anybody looking at this thing from everything that's in there. And it may also need to be, depending upon the amount of noise, it may need to be baffled or something to cut down on the amount of noise. So, but that's part of the noise study. If you're in excess of what our code says you can do, you're gonna have to baffle it in some fashion. So you may have to have special kind of fencing to baffle it.
So, and the plans have been revised to provide for different fencing now. It's gonna be vinyl fencing, so it's a solid structure instead of a chain link fence. And I think the proposal is tan, but that can be pretty much almost any color that you would like.
I don't know, something that's greenish,
Have you ever used CMU block?
I'm the attorney, I don't have the construction, so I don't know, what is it?
Well, because concrete masonry block, because let's say it is loud, right?
Yeah.
So instead of having a fence and you have that, it acts as a barrier. So then again, more mitigation to the people in the apartment house.
so why don't we leave that for a mitigation?
Yeah, but I'm just,
Right.
getting him to think about these things.
Yeah, let's see what generally the noise is not a big deal, because it's usually, every noise study I've seen, and the one that I have in here. Shows you that at the property line, it's gonna be not much more than. Conversation, it's usually about 55-60 decibels.
Like, we just want to make sure.
I just put a new generator in one of my houses, and I can't hear it from the road.
It's a different, I mean, it's much bigger generator, so.
Not a huge amount, I got a 35.
No,
That's a miracle generator.
So that's the purpose of a test, rather than
Yeah,
us.
we're gonna do it, we'll show you what it is.
The question I have is, you said that if there is co-location down the road, would they be definitely be providing their own generators or not?
I don't know,
But the
some,
generator that you guys are planning on putting on would not cover any co-located.
that's correct.
Okay,
That's correct. I think one of the carriers will use backup batteries. Verizon doesn't because the battery backups last maybe a day or two. So what we have here is the generator will last about a week with fuel, and then we dispatch somebody because we monitor the fuel remotely to know.
and would there be space, assuming you could have multiple co-locators there, would there be space provided in the initial construction for additional generators?
Think that was, let me ask what,
Because
how it's typically done, because I am not involved with the co-locators, so I don't usually see what happens after this process, so I'm gonna find out.
okay.
We have enough space, we have 100 foot by 100 foot, we have the lease area, we have enough space.
I thought it was 50 by 50.
That's not the lease area, that's just what we're building in. We have 100 foot by 100 foot.
Oh,
lease area.
what you're leasing.
Well, we're leasing a 10,000 square foot, but we're only gonna have a footprint of 50 by 50.
But if you go out, that's where the fence is, so you couldn't put the generator outside the fence, could you?
No.
Well, I think physically you could, but we wouldn't because we fence everything inside here. Yeah, but even at 50 by 50, it's still a decent amount of, but let me find out what happens typically, because I don't know.
I mean, just because we have to,
It's pretty big.
we have to consider that. Obviously,
Yeah.
for, the worst case scenario. Of what, how many different co-located antennas there could be, and all the infrastructure and noise that goes along with that. Potentially something we should be aware of now.
That's a murky, I know what you're saying, I understand it.
Yeah.
But we don't know what is gonna happen. I mean, I know you have to try to do that, I get it. But you don't know if anybody's gonna come, so it's hard to say.
Right.
Well, the way we're gonna take care of it is put into the conditions that any co-locator has to come back to this
Yes.
board for a site plan. And then they're gonna have to prove that the combination of your noise and their noise doesn't exceed our code.
And I agree.
And if it exceeds the
I
code,
think
then they have
that's
to mitigate it.
absolutely the
Yeah.
way to handle it.
We'll do it that way.
Yeah.
So as a standard, what we do normally, do they have the same, do they use the same generator or do they have their own?
No,
ones?
that's
How does it?
that's the odd thing is, no, they do not share generator space. I don't know why, but typically the industry does not share that. Once in a while, if we're at a building and they have a massive generator, we can do a generator tap for that, but even then.
Right.
We don't like doing that, we like to make sure that we have full control of our equipment.
I received something from you today, Scott, or yesterday, having to do with the roadway that approaches the 55 by 50 compound.
Today, that was what, something that Mr. Boulder requested back in February, I believe.
Okay,
And I received that letter probably last week, I just saw it.
Yeah, so I'll take you.
all right, so take a look at that. It had to do with the width of the road.
Yes,
And it sounded to me that they're okay with the 12-foot width. I don't think we're okay with that, because I don't know how you get a fire truck in there with a 12-foot width with the turning radius, but So you and Peter need
I was
to,
gonna reach out to Peter and.
okay, so let's just figure out if it's sufficient. Okay,
I have a,
go ahead.
I have a question. In regards to the biological assessment, I noted that the maps that, I'm assuming that the maps that were submitted are the maps that I'm seeing in here, and none of them indicated the wetlands that are depicted on the adjoiner's map. And so therefore, when they were making statements that, there are no wetlands on the site, there are wetlands on the site. So that, to me, is a hole. So you might want to look into that and maybe have them resubmit their statement and take a hard look at that. And then also, because it is the New York, it's potentially a federal wetland, you're gonna have to go through that DEC process.
So.
Correct, we're not in a wetland.
I understand that.
I think that's
but-
what they were trying to
but-
say, but I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, well, it states, what is it, that they're, avoiding placement near wetlands. And it said in or near wetlands, and the maps that were there didn't show any wetlands, and it is near wetlands, and so, it's
So Scott,
something that, you know.
Helena and I,
me.
when we met way back when with Dan on site, he gave us a map
That's the adjoiner's map.
that showed the wetlands. Quite a distance from the 50 pad, but they were wetlands.
Yes,
We questioned, well, where'd you get this information from? Because we couldn't find it anywhere. So I think Helena's point is absolutely correct. Whatever map we're finally dealing with for the site plan, need to show for the whole site, not just the 50, but the whole site, where are the wetlands?
Yeah, on the parcel, because some of it, I think, also had to do with impacts to birds, et cetera, so. Just if we're going through this process, you need to be accurate.
Yeah, can I jump in just for a second? So the original description of the wetlands. When we chose the site, that map came from the DEC website. Since then, after we met with you all, we did a full wetland delineation.
Can you introduce yourself to the whole board?
Oh, sure, yes.
We're on a screen here.
Yeah, I'm Dan Weinheimer, Site Acquisition Specialist with Tectonic Engineering. So I've been involved in the site selection process. So
Thanks.
as I was saying, originally, we used a map from the DEC website, a wetlands map. Which is how we chose the location that we did. After we then met with you all out at the site. It was determined we would provide a full wetland delineation. Where we had consultants go out and map out the entire property, wetlands professional, so they've done that. And that map is on the new set of plans that we provided to you.
Okay, was that provided to the people that were doing your biological assessment as well? So they know that there was wetlands on the site?
That I don't know, I'd have to ask the people who
Yeah.
do that order, but it's the same people that are doing the ordering, so
Okay.
we would have to confirm that, I can't
Yeah.
answer, I don't know.
It's just a, little question,
Yeah, no, it's a great question, so thank you for
just
that,
for thoroughness.
yeah, of course, no, that's good,
Thanks, Dan.
okay, you're welcome.
You can stay there.
Okay.
Maybe he doesn't want to.
Okay. So we talked about the noise study. We already made a determination about the seeker, whether it's a type 1 or an unlisted, and the last meeting we determined and we voted on it being unlisted, so.
Correct.
We've got that done. So. The next item, and I have to apologize up front if I didn't send this to you, because this is rather recent. There's the issue of the waiver for the additional height that you were requesting. We'll call it the height waiver, not the height variance. That would be something different. So the height waiver. And the height waiver, as I recall, would be an additional 20 feet to, oh no, I'm sorry. The height waiver is that which is above what our code allows. And our code allows a height of 50. Plus, as I recall, the code says, whatever the average tree line is, which we determined to be 45 feet. So that would be 95 feet. And you're asking for 145 feet.
Right.
So the waiver is quite significant.
What the code, I'm sorry to interrupt, what the code does say you're authorized to go up to 150-foot waiver.
Yes.
So
does
it's at
say
least been contemplated.
It does, it
I
does
hear what
say
you're
that.
saying.
So, I asked, our attorney to come up with, a document and a explanation of how we might look at providing this waiver to go from 95 to 145, which is a specific height that you're asking for. So he did that. It was in a letter of May 22nd. It's in your folder. I think I have extra copies. Is that the one? Nope, it's this one.
Yeah.
This one. And Scott, I'm not sure if I gave this to you, sent this to you.
Haven't seen it
All
yet.
right, does anybody want a copy? Do you have, anyone want a
I read it.
copy, paper copy? Would you give one to, Scott? Anybody else want a paper copy?
Look at it.
All right, so
You said-
some coming down that way.
Thank you very much.
Anybody else over here?
Thank you. Got it. Oh, okay.
And Dave, are you all set? To be the, this Dave, to explain this to us, to be the waiver whisperer?
Same as it ever was. Sure, the waiver provision is a very important aspect of our overall determination. I mean, that for a cell tower, the height of a cell tower is clearly one of the most important characteristics that we're gonna be reviewing. If for no other reason that the, one of the most important environmental impacts of a cell tower is gonna be its visibility, and that is in many ways directly related to its height. Also, as I think Rick observed, this is gonna be a fairly substantial determination, not only because of its importance, but also because of the size of it. We have functionally a 95-foot zoning restriction, and they're asking for a 145-foot tower. Now, when Verizon originally put together their application, and this is perfectly legitimate, the concept would have been not to go for the waiver, but rather to go for the to go to the ZBA for an area variance. They ultimately chose to come to the planning board for a waiver, but it's fairly obvious, both from their choice and from the role that this determination plays, that the waiver ultimately fulfills close to the same role as an area variance. It would essentially remove this particular restriction and replace it with a different restriction that we would impose ad hoc. And so when we were looking, and also the code provides, unfortunately, almost no criteria. Like in some of the other waivers we've been concerned about, the code has some criteria that doesn't impact the environment or whatever. There was very little criteria here, and so the goal was to come up with some criteria for the board to use for a number of reasons. First of all, I mean, just the law likes to see an administrative agency have criteria that it has to apply, because I mean, otherwise we're just all making sort of seat of the pants ad hoc decisions, and that's not really the way the world should work. We want to have it be more rational. When I first got into this, I thought I would base the criteria on what the standard criteria for an area variance, which again is what the applicant was originally considering and what this would replace. And for those of you who are familiar with it, it's sometimes referred to as the 5 factors. Basically, it comes down to whether or not the benefit to the applicant is offset, or how it's offset by the impact on the neighborhood. And that's really crafted for a situation like somebody's, expanding their porch too close to the sidewalk. And so it's the benefit to the homeowner against the, what the detriment is to the neighbor from the porch. This is a little bit different for a couple of reasons. First of all, the benefit here arguably is not just to Verizon, but it's also to a service area and closing gaps in service. Second of all, obviously the impact is going to be potentially a lot more than the neighborhood when you deal with a cell tower of 145 feet that has whatever visibility that it does. And so when we put together the draft of the standards, we started with the area variance standards, and there we repeat them in the memo, and then we try to apply them. But what I found to my what I was pleased to find is that there were other criteria in the code that could be used as analogies here. And the most important of those extra criteria were just the basic policies behind the town code section on wireless telecommunications facilities. In other words, when the town drafted its section on wireless telecommunications facilities, it listed the policies and the goals of the section, and to a great extent, those become very, very good analogs for the criteria that we want to use, the specific, and it's better in essence than the area variance standards alone, because those are more generic, and these are specifically related to cell towers. So we use those as well. And thirdly, we use the some of the standards for other waivers from site plans, because they specify some important concepts, including the fact that in general, that you can get a waiver from the procedural standards of a site plan much more easily than from the substantive standards. In other words, this is a substantive standard, but to some extent, anyway, these are all detailed in the memo. And it kind of the more I kind of go through it one by one, the more I'm just spending time on what you guys can otherwise read. And finally, the fourth thing, which is very important as well, is that when we grant our site plan approval, and also, of course, when we grant the waiver, which is going to be hand in hand with the site plan approval, we don't have an open field here. We have a field which is in some ways impacted by both state and federal law in ways that a typical site plan approval just is not. We have time constraints that are in federal law. We have other issues in federal law, such as that we can't be prohibiting cell service, and state law as well has certain rules for actually telecommunications facilities and other utilities, which is basically that because telecommunications facilities are considered utilities in state law, when push comes to shove on our determinations, an applicant has a much easier route to get a variance than you would otherwise. And just if you want to try to digest why that occurs, is just imagine you live in a residential area, and Central Hudson, for example, it's all zoned residential. You can't have commercial facilities there, but Central Hudson wants to put a line from the pole out to your house. That's a commercial use. And so if you were to deny a variance for that, and there have been situations where the variances have been denied. For example, the seminal case was Indian Point. When they built Indian Point, the village of Buchanan tried to zone it out. And that was actually the seminal case on this. And so the bottom line is the state has ruled that ZBA's ability to deny variances to utilities is somewhat constrained. And other rulings have demonstrated that a cell tower is a utility for those purposes. And so that also acts as a constraint on what we're doing, and that has to be reflected in this, because this is part of the issue, because we're granting something functionally close to a variance. And so the other moving piece here is that, having drafted this memo, I do not want to be in the position of unilaterally determining this issue, because it's too important to the applicant, it's too important to the public, and it's important for you guys as well, obviously. And so what I've advised the board is to put these criteria up for public comment as part of the public hearing. So I consider this a draft. I've described the moving pieces in it. It's what we tried to do to try to make this as fair and as consistent with, as faithful to the law as possible, given the fact that the town board has not given us a whole lot of criteria here, and to try to recreate that. But I want to hear if I've missed anything, if I've made any mistakes, if I used the wrong analogies, if there's other things to think about. And so the point is to draft this thing and then to put it out there for public comment along with the rest of it, because you'll ultimately get to the waiver determination at the tail end after seeker is done, when it's going to be part of your determination. And so that's really what's on paper here. Or
so Dave, are you suggesting that there's a separate set of public hearings just on the waiver?
No,
or it's part of
I don't do that.
we make it clear that it's included in the public hearing for the entire project?
Everything that the board is considering, including, as we've discussed, to the extent the board wants to, including the seeker determination, we ought to hear from the public on that, especially in important cases like this. So open the public hearing, hear from the board, hear from the public on declaration of significance, pos dec, neg dec, whatever you think, and criteria, on the waiver criteria, on everything they want to talk about, get it all out. Because frankly, in this case, in most cases, it's all very, very, I mean, the same comment could apply to the waivers, could apply to the site plan, could apply to the declaration of significance. There's no reason to make the public go through that 3 times. There's no reason to make the applicant go through it 3 times. We don't have the time anyway, because we are on a bit of a clock. And so have a public hearing, get everything out on the desk. This should be part of it. And we'll hear what everybody has to say, including the applicant, because it's their project, and including the public, because there is a lot of concern out there, and we're coming up with these criteria, which we have to do, but we want to make as few errors as possible. Let's put it that way.
So is there a recommendation on how to get that to the public, those considerations to the public?
Give it to them. I mean, put it on, this town, unfortunately, we haven't been as active as we should be in terms of in terms of putting things up on the web. But having been told that, I mean, this document should be in the town clerk's office and the planning board office, and so it's subject to FOIL. I encourage people to do it, or I encourage the board just, print 25 copies and put it out on a desk. I mean, there's no desire to keep this within our.
No, I was just wondering if there.
But typically
recommendation
most towns nowadays take everything the planning board is doing and put it up on the web.
No, I was just wondering if there was a streamlined way to sort of make a concise version of what you just said to the public.
Well, if you want to make it concise, you can take the recommendation section and clip it off as opposed to the whole explanation. But I'm happy to have people review the logic and the references as well.
No, that's fine.
I think that's good. I'm glad you said that. I'm glad that you recommend having public opinion, because that's where I was with the waiver, just it's
Like tell us what to do. Tell
really, really important.
Yeah.
We see that in other things that we handle, but this is really important to get everyone's input.
And it produces an extra layer of, not complexity, just another layer of work, but we have, this is a privilege that's offered to the applicant, but it's a privilege that requires a significant amount of consideration and thought. Perhaps even more than the ZBA would do if it was an area variance, because we have these, it's a significant thing, and obviously you can get a significant area variance if you're required to provide a 20-foot setback for the porch, and you're only going to require to do a 5-foot setback, and that would be considered a significant,
Yes.
variance. But obviously, we got a situation here where it's a lot bigger consideration. So I wanted to try to do the most complete logic that we could, but also there's a lot of intelligence out there that could add to the benefit of it.
You have a copy of it now.
I have a copy of it, we'll take a look at it. The only thing, I'm gonna get too far ahead of myself. And I don't know what the board's gonna do. I don't think the board knows what's gonna do when it comes down to deciding whether to grant the waiver or not. And I don't wanna put any thoughts in your heads, but I just wanna I wanna just preempt it by saying, if it comes to the point where the board decides to decline to grant the waiver, that I don't think has any effect on the special use permit application, because we do have an application technically pending for the variance.
Okay.
And I understand the complexity of trying to do this, but in reality, I would suggest that it should be similar to the variance standard for the public utilities, because if you were to deny this variance, we're gonna go to the ZBA and they're gonna have to apply the public utility variance. So but I'll look at what you have. I haven't read it. So
And well, that concept is in here as well.
Okay.
The fourth thing was federal and state constraints.
Yeah.
And the primary state constraint is the state variance standard. So we have the concept is we have a limited ability to say no. Having said that, there's a whole other, if we were to deny the waiver, and if the ZBA were to deny the variance, it doesn't mean that, there's no cell service here, but it may mean that the alternative is not just one 145-foot tower, but have we looked at the possibility of 3 or 4 or however many, 95-foot towers would be necessary? And that, I don't know if that's practical. I don't know how much we've looked at that, but that, it's not necessarily denial of service or whatever the federal phrase is,
Right.
Prohibition. If we can have more than one, but at a lower level. So I don't know how that all plays
yeah,
together.
I mean, I just wanted to put that in your minds. Again, I don't know how you're gonna rule on the waiver. But even if we decided that you didn't feel comfortable granting that, we would then go to the ZBA and have them try to apply the public utility waivers standard. Because frankly, it's a much easier standard than your traditional waiver, because the point of it is you have to have public utilities and essential services, which this pretty much is, as close to residential areas as possible nowadays.
Well, I would also point out that the core of, and Scott may disagree with me on this, and maybe we should have the conversation, maybe we could have this conversation. But the core of the state's lower standard for variances is really for use variances. That, like I said, if you could have you want to have a utility in, let's say, a residential area, or for that matter, a nuclear power plant in a village, you can zone that out very, very easily, right? No, and it's very, very hard to get a use variance. They typically don't occur. And so the state's reaction was really much more for use variances. And most of the cases actually will say it's for use variances. There are a couple of cases that I'm sure Scott is very well aware of that do apply to area variances as well. But I will point out it's probably a little bit less applicable, because area variances, and for the public not being familiar, a use variance is when it's the wrong use. You're doing a commercial activity in a residential zone. An area variance is if something is too big, too close. It's usually a dimension. And the point is, if an applicant can't get the full area variance, they can make it a little smaller and maybe get a different one, something like that. So it's a more flexible type of a thing. And also arguably, it's an open question as to how much the state what's the right word, benefit, let's say, to a variance applicant, to a utility, is as applicable to an area variance as use variance. And that's something we can hear from a comment from the applicant as well in terms of the law there. But it's fair to say that the state was much more concerned about being zoned this type of utility, which is necessary for public health and welfare in most cases, being zoned out, which is done by uses and not because the number is too big or small. So there's a lot of moving pieces here. That's why we want to hear from everybody. And Scott's got a number of good points. They can go back to the ZBA and deal with it on that level. It gives them perhaps a second bite at the apple. Although I would also point out the determination is going to be tied to our seeker review and some of the determinations we make about height and about the impacts there. And so the ZBA is also going to have to rely on that seeker review as well. And so we want to get all this out on the table. Ultimately, these decisions should all be made in the same place and not in disparate places. But there's a lot of conceptual moving pieces here that we're trying to figure out how this works. And that's why I want to hear from everybody.
And I do agree with you that I will disagree about that, and I'm not gonna drag it on.
I got two lawyers in the room, right?
No, but you're right. No, and I've heard the argument. I understand. I will just say that Indian Point case, a major component of it was an area variance.
Was it the 500-foot
It
tower?
was a 500-foot tower
wasn't
in a 35-foot residential area, the 35-foot height restriction, and the court said, no, you have to let them go at 536.
It was also new, but you see a lot of cases that
So,
cover the use variance.
We can certainly talk about that.
Fair enough.
That's-
And if you want to put together, a legal memo on that, I'm happy to take a look at it.
There's two lawyers in a room, you get
Yeah.
at least three.
For the third lawyer, nobody.
You
doesn't
get
get out
more
of
than
here.
3 opinions.
Questions from the board?
Yeah, can I jump back to the submission, the tone as Rick refers to it? I just had a couple of questions, that in the visual assessment part, there was nothing on there. There were some submitted pictures that I took from Stony Kill Falls, which is part of Minnewaska State Park, that they're not included in there, and it was visible.
And I asked, I think that was brought up during our call, and
I think I brought it
Stony
up to you.
Hill Road is what is that?
Well, Stony Kill Road, but Stony Kill Falls is in Minnewaska State Park. And that was an area that we didn't know when we were first doing the balloon test, whether we'd be able to get access to because of ice and snow still in the area.
Yep,
I was able to get there. I
Okay.
was able to see it.
and you sent those.
Those pictures were submitted.
I will.
Shot the balloon?
Yeah.
So put it in the record, give it to the applicant. And
Yeah.
so-
Yeah, no, it was submitted, so.
Okay.
It was submitted to our folks,
Submitted.
whoever you were dealing with, I forget. Could have been,
And then was there a question?
Well, then make sure it gets into our record separately, because the applicant, if they drop the ball on it, we would still have it.
Yeah. Yep. So, and then, are we doing a simulation, the simulation of the tower? Are we doing it with multiple antennas? can we see what that looks like?
We could show you what it looks like.
Yeah, I think that would be, I mean, I think it's unrealistic and a little misleading to think that if this does get approved, there's just gonna be one set of antennas up there, and I think in terms of the public, I think it'd be a public benefit to seeing what the reality is, what it would potentially look like.
We can do that, and
Okay.
again, I totally appreciate where you're coming from. It just becomes so difficult because our application is for this and it's somewhat speculative, but we can certainly provide what that could be.
Yeah, your application is for this, but
Correct.
is the application with this, with the provision
Yeah.
of being able to sell co-location space?
Yes,
So I think that that's only fair to
No, I
represent that.
I understand exactly where you're coming from.
That was all I had.
And along those lines, I actually think we got something from Ulster County Planning Board on specifically that came from Dennis Doyle. He mentioned that in a letter to us. Dave, I think you saw that letter.
Well, it was summarized the conversation.
Okay, that's what it was.
I had at your request.
Right. Okay. What about,
He wanted, the county planning director had recommended, a visual that involved a travel experience. It was more in reference to the scenic byway.
Okay,
Are you gonna see it for a duration of time while traveling? I mean, no.
I'm not laughing at that. I'm laughing because I was wanting to say that I know Dennis very well. We speak to him every 2 weeks because we're working with Ulster County on numerous potential sites because they have a need to develop and enhance their radio communications. And he's looking at this project as something that the county may go on. There's no,
To co-location?
yes, we told him during one of the things, we're in town of Rochester. He's like, oh, can I see the coordinates? We don't have any indication that they've decided it, but so I kind of find that ironic.
Right, but
so what was your statement
Funny-
that he's looking at this site as being a co-locating site for his?
They're looking to see if it would fit within their network.
County emergency stuff?
You're correct. They are co-locating on one of our other sites in Shandaken. We call it Phoenicia. And there are other sites that like 5 of them are going on, or they're going on ours. Because they're working for them and us, so.
you told me that before.
There was because I know about this, the fire department, that there's, they're expanding the emergency services implementation. Because it's lacking in a lot of ways for radio.
Yes,
And I know there had been casual discussion about approaching about the other location behind the old Rainbow Diner, the solar farm, as a upgrading or changing for radio communications. I just heard talk of that, nothing official. So
I'm not familiar with that site, but so it hasn't come up on our discussions.
So talking about simulation, Peter asked about simulating what if there were other co-locators, what that would look like. How about simulation at what it would look like at different heights? Referencing the RF study that was done where Mr. Fishman suggested that down to a level of 125 or 130, that the reception or that the coverage is obviously not what it would be at 145, but is adequate to serve some percentage of the people not being served. So can we get simulations at other heights?
I think we can get them at realistic heights, and if Mr. Fishman suggested that, I'll go through his report. I mean, we don't want to give you a simulation for something that we're not gonna build, like if. You know, if Mr. Fishman says 130 and if our people say 130 is, you know, is not. It has problems, but if they kind of say, well, maybe, as a compromise, then we can do that, but if my RF engineer says 110, I want to build it, I don't think we would give you that because it's.
Yeah, it's right in his study.
Yeah, I'll look at that, whatever he
studies,
says,
yeah.
I think you're right,
It's in
he may
there.
say 130 might be.
He made,
I think what he said was 130 possibly for just Verizon, it will compromise a little bit. But if the tower has to be built for co-location, whatever, what we're proposing at 145 is appropriate.
I would point out that when we looked at the criteria for the waiver, and I was analogizing over to the criteria for an area variance, one of the critical criteria for an area variance that we are recommending we put in the waiver is that when the ZBA grants an area variance, it has to grant the minimum variance necessary to accomplish the purposes of the applicant. So if the applicant wants to, let's say, expand the porch so they could have a walkway or something like that, and they want like, they want to expand to 20 feet, but if the board found that an expansion of 10 feet would comply with their purposes, then it's a 10-foot variance. And the implication here is that the rule that we're waiving is a 95-foot rule, they're asking for 145. And so if the requirement were to carry through from the area variance factors into what we do here, and the recommendation is to grant the minimum alternative height necessary to accomplish the purposes of the applicant and the purposes of the public that are the customers of the applicant. And so this is something to think about, is whether we can ratchet down a little bit what they're asking for. If that's what, that's ultimately going to be the board's determination based on the RF studies and the like. So this is a very live question in terms of just because they're asking for 50 feet doesn't mean that they get 50 feet. We think that the impact of a lower tower is less and it still accomplishes what they want. Now, Scott's raising the point that, okay, but if it's going to be co-location, maybe we need a little more. That's something for you to evaluate in conjunction with your RF consultant.
Question, please. Would a shorter tower impact other aspects of the project, for example, the size of the generator?
No. No, so basically it runs on a 200 amp service.
So that's regardless.
So it's the same power, because a shorter tower is gonna have the exact same antennas on there and the radios, so it's gonna draw the same power. So we're not gonna basically use a lower spec generator, because you still have the same.
And no other aspects of the project would change with a shorter tower?
No,
Like,
it would just,
nothing would-
no, it would stay the same spot. It would just be a lower tower.
Okay.
Yeah.
Visual.
Yeah, but that's why I think I wanna see Mr. Allen's, because I looked at the visuals and obviously it's United Beholder. We were very pleased with the visuals. Yes, there are some locations where you can see it, but because it's not on a ridge, again, I don't live in the area, but when I look at photos, I'm like, what's that big giant white elephant, which is HVR? That's what my eyes are drawn to. Yes, you'll see the tower, but it's the HVR building to me that's, at least, again, just.
It's for sale if you want to buy it.
How much?
Cheap.
I don't.
What is Verizon, the primary erector of the initial tower and everybody else tags along? Or is it the case that your competitors compete with you to put the original tower up? And where I'm going with it is, if we say to you, look, our RF guy says you're good to go at 130, and using Dave's application of the CBA variance drill of the minimum to accomplish what you want to accomplish but minimize the impact. That then says that there might be less co-locators and they wind up coming in and want to do their own single tower.
I think I understand.
It sounds like Verizon is got the deepest pockets and the deepest desire to begin these towers, or else we would have gotten AT&T here already or somebody else here already.
No, that's actually a very good point, and it's an observation I've made recently where I don't know if we're the deepest pockets, but with Verizon seems to be spending the money to build new towers, and we've been joking around, it's like, seems like some of the carriers are following us around. Not everywhere, but we're putting the capital and money into it, but
So it's a pattern that once you build a tower that the co-locators follow you?
only in some cases we've seen it. I mean, not every, like I said, I've heard that once in a while. I don't see what happens after the fact. But having said that,
Do they pay you for that?
maybe,
Do they pay Verizon for the privilege of
yes,
co-locating?
yeah, they'll pay,
Or they-
yeah. But Verizon doesn't market it. Verizon doesn't make, it's not a lot of money for Verizon. The money that they make is by putting the towers up to provide the service. That's how they make their money. They do not actively sell, market this.
So I was all ready to say, if you want your tower, you gotta share the,
Verizon, no, I'll just.
No. Just
Do
kidding.
they have to, just, excuse me, does Verizon have to take co-locators on this?
Depends on the code.
Well, your code requires it, but I will say there's an industry. There were industry agreements where we have agreements with the other carriers that we will go on your towers, you'll let us go on your towers if you have them and they work for us, and we will do the same for you. And we have a standard lease supplement and pricing for it. So yes, and your code requires it. So they couldn't come to you and say, we want to put up a tower right next door to this. And you would say, well, why? You don't need to, you can go on this tower. And they would have to go on our tower under the code.
And are co-locators, are they only, they're radio as well as cellular, right? So somebody could come along, like Ulster County presumably, could come along with a radio repeater.
They can, yes, because they're generally around 154 megahertz. And the lowest we are is basically 700 megahertz, so they're very far apart from each other. So they can coexist.
And if there was a co-locator that was not a cellular, do they look that, and I don't know the answer, do they look vastly different than a cellular antenna? I mean, is that something?
You're going to see different antennas for municipal uses and the county. They will typically use, we use panel antennas. And they will use like a Yagi antenna or it goes 360. Our panel antennas are directional. They point in the general direction, whereas a stick Yagi antenna is going to emit 360. So, and those are usually taller. They're skinnier. They're usually 20 feet tall or so, but they're much skinnier. And we do offer space on the tower for local municipal, local EMS, that sort of stuff, rent free. So if there's a need for local EMS, we provide that. We don't buy their equipment or install it, but we will provide the space rent free. And I think if they do it when we're building our tower, we sometimes might install it for free. I just would have to confirm that.
So is it your sense, it sounds like it is your sense that Ulster County is looking at this particular site for whatever they're doing to expand their emergency services in Ulster County?
Yes.
Okay, so I think it would be important to know that, I mean, we've heard rumors about it, but to know that and not have recriminations down, wrong word, but right sentiment down the road that what you guys did is making it difficult for us to do what we want to do. It's like, well, then tell us what you want to do. So I don't know, Dave, you could reach out again to Dennis and tell them to put their foot forward and tell us what they want to do.
If you
I don't think it's that concrete.
we speak to them every couple of weeks on a Monday. But I know Dennis and Steve Peterson very well. If you wouldn't mind, I would do that. I would like to do that.
Ask them what the.
Ask
Yeah, exactly. Because I know that they've asked for certain information. I just don't think they've made a decision.
So it's one of these things, when we get ready to make a decision, if we say you can't build it, or you can only build 130, or you can only build, and then, I hear from somebody yonder, what the hell are you people doing? Didn't you know? No, I didn't know because you didn't tell us.
If Dennis wants it, they should let us know.
I completely agree, and listen, I'm in a better spot than my client if we have, Ulster County that wants to go on there, because that just adds to the need.
Well, there was a presentation by Steve Peterson in Ulster County for the fire departments in the area, because they're trying to expand and fill communication holes, which we have a lot of places in this town where radios don't work as well as cell phones don't work, and obviously that's an important consideration.
This is very specific. If they want this power, we should know that at the time we get to these issues.
Yeah.
I don't want it to be after
It doesn't make any sense for.
I will find out.
It would probably make sense. I mean, as a former Dennis Doyle in a different county, Dennis can't decide that.
Right.
It's not up to Dennis.
No.
Don't tell Dennis that.
But I don't
Dennis
think,
might want it to be up to him, but he's not even the department head for the department that would place it, right? So let alone, It's,
Well,
it's a decision that has to be made.
you know, if there's information out there, better to hear that beforehand than after.
Tell the left hand to tell the right hand what they're doing.
I hear what
You
you're
could say
saying. I'm
it
just
is-
speaking with Dennis and Steve. And so I know they're running it through their departments.
I mean, kind of, if it were built, Rick, would they? Kind of question?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe you could.
Yeah.
If this were to exist.
If
would
this,
you-
then that.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'll find out.
Okay. And I guess it's very important for us to know what height they need it at. And I have no idea.
Oh, that's absolutely true. Because I know I'm on another site. And I'm not saying it's the case here. But at that other site, we're at 165.
Was that
They would- they need-
Shandaken?
Is this the Warson site,
Yeah.
Shandaken?
Shandaken, and it's public record, we were at 165, 160, and they need to be at 190.
And they want,
190, so, and that's not always the case, because they're,
That's mountain, so.
Yes.
yeah, it's pretty rough there to try to propagate the signal.
But isn't Ulster County putting in a communications tower in Warson?
Oh,
They
they're
are,
pretty.
they are already at Sam's Point.
No, this is,
Sam's
That's more Warsing.
They
no,
hit
no,
Sam's
no,
Point,
but
they're there.
it's a site somewhere off of 209 by, I think, the highway department. They're gonna be putting
Oh,
it on
like
that
new
bridge.
highway department
I
building?
think it's an emergency, it's Ulster County Emergency telecommunications tower.
Okay.
They're also putting in, well, the whole system over in New Paltz on the east side of the thruway also.
It would be good to, I guess, get more intel or desire from, Steve Peterson and those people about what their plans are, because I know they've been working in Saugerties, there's something talking in Marbletown.
Yep.
We're saying that they're really.
They're
trying-
doing a lot of work.
They're doing a lot of different projects, so.
and I think the last thing that I have, you have the ability to add 20 feet as of right.
Correct, well, yeah,
We want you to waive that.
What's that?
We want you to waive that,
No. I don't know, I can just waive it, but,
not do it. Got a way of saying it?
yeah, we can look into it, because it's a little more difficult because it's a federal law. So, we could say that.
You just say you don't want to do it.
What?
You don't want to do it. You're
I
not
don't,
gonna do it.
yeah, I'll see what they say. I mean, there are ways to do it. I just want to do it the most awful way.
Well, if we were to say 145, it means you go to 165, and we say, well, then we're gonna go to 130, so you can't go over 150. So you. pick
But I
your
think it
poison.
has to be based on science, and I think your consultant has said we need the 145.
No, it would be the optimum. He said something different. I don't remember the number, what would be adequate. Yeah, there's a big difference between adequate and optimal.
But that,
But-
area, that doesn't mean that your consultant's 100% right, or ours is 100% right, so you're just.
Well, That's why we looked at your study, that section of study. You didn't say he was wrong
That, I didn't say who's wrong.
in what you.
We haven't responded to that.
In the tone, you haven't responded.
Right.
Okay, all right. But so,
Well, let me ask the art here.
I mean, for obvious reasons, I give you X and then you know, I give you an inch, you take a yard.
Let me ask you, because,
I just won't give you the.
and I don't think it's, I don't think, well. I don't go down that route, but.
Okay,
I have a question about.
yes, Jennifer.
So if there's, as it is now, I understand you're asking them to waive it, but as of now, there's. The ability to add additional height as of right.
That's my understanding, yeah.
Does the visual analysis include that 20-foot height differential? Because that is a reasonable worst case scenario under environmental review standards.
Excellent point.
Except they still have to come back for you. I know, it comes up all the time. There's no case law on that right now.
But it's a reasonable worst case if it's packed into the site plan approval, when you're able to add this additional height, then that should be analyzed as part of the environmental review.
I understand what you're saying now. Let me ask
If
you,
you choose to waive that right, then that would be different, but.
So
Yeah.
if you want to cut down on the amount of work,
I do.
you should waive it. Or
I
give it
have
up.
to ask my client, and it's been done like that in the past. We have done some work around because when Verizon comes in, they're applying for what they need. They're not playing a game. So, however, if we were to do that, just so you know, if we were to say we're not gonna go above a certain height, another carrier could come in and say. We need to go higher. But we can't raise this tower any higher, and they might, apply for a tower right next door to it. Or
But they gotta find somebody who's gonna give them the. You had a hard time finding people who were willing to rent you property in that area. So we might be willing to take the risk and say, ain't gonna happen.
I'm not.
But I
saying-
understand what
not-
you're saying.
I'm just saying it's something to think about, because if we limit it to a certain height. We're gonna build the foundation just to that height, so it can't be extended, so if you change your mind later on. It's gonna be it's kind of too late, and I'm not, so just think about it, that's all I'm saying. I hear what you're
No,
saying,
we'll think
and
about
we've
it.
done it before. There are ways to do it, but if we do that and another carrier comes and says we have to go higher. It is what it is.
Well, then they gotta
It's
go.
not,
Well, we need to know what we're approving.
What's that?
At the end of the day, we need to know what we're approving.
Yeah.
And we need to know what the visual is, to your point. And I think that if you're not gonna waive the 20 feet, then we have to talk about the worst case scenario. Just as we need to consider all the antennae or whatever they are on the top as the worst case scenarios. It's like any building project. We're approving the maximum that's going to be, that we're allowing to build, right?
And we
So
wanna know what
that's
that
we
looks
look
like.
at.
Yeah.
One possibility, I mean, nobody wants this to happen. One possibility is if we were to prove it at 145 and regardless what Verizon wanted, if somebody came along and wanted to go to 165. If we do, let's say, for example, a negative declaration here, or for that matter, even in EIS, at the end of the day, the seeker analysis is going to be done at 145 unless something changes. That's what the balloon test was. That does not authorize under seeker in terms of a declaration of significance 165. And so if even though there may be a federal right to an amended site plan approval, which we might not be able to deny, that does not obviate our requirement under state law to do a seeker analysis of it. And guess what? If they're going up to 165, when we found in 145, we get a fresh declaration of significance. We pause deck that because now it's a bigger tower. We just want to pause deck it. And so not obviously we have reasons for it, but we just going to carry more. And so there are chess pieces that can be moved around, but none of this is efficient in any.
Yes, yeah.
let me just find out from the RF engineer and the client, like I said, it's been done before. But we don't like to give up federal, right? But at the same time, they always say, but we just need the 145.
And your admonition, just think that somebody may come in and do it anyway with another tower. The board will have to evaluate if we're willing to take that risk.
That can be pause decked as well.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a fresh determination.
Pause deck on the basis we got too many of these things too close to.
Well, pause deck on the basis
But a pause deck doesn't-
165 feet or whatever they're gonna put it at, and if we were to do a neg deck, I don't know if it's gonna happen at 145, but then that doesn't mean 165 is a whole different ballgame, and especially if it's a new tower, they don't even get the benefit of the federal law anymore that they have a right to do it, so.
Right, right.
So,
SEEK provides a useful tool here.
so my comment is if you don't waive, then you need to resubmit for 165, whatever the max would be as of right.
Need to show.
They'll need to resubmit, but the federal law would say we couldn't deny it, I think that.
Maybe not, but we need to see the.
That's right, but we could modify, we could make them painted green, we could require pause deck for it, so.
Well, and the public comment needs to incorporate the actual potential visual impact.
Correct. Yeah.
Shot clock,
Okay,
sorry.
what's that?
So we agreed that the shot clock started to run on January 15th. We have a letter that's been countersigned and signed. So technically, what do we guess? 5 months, so that's coming up June something. I just want to proactively say, if we're not gonna be back here before that middle of June, can we agree to extend it for, say, 3 months?
It's a good idea.
Like I said, the letter.
You're convinced that this board is moving diligently in terms of getting the work done?
We're moving, the biggest holdup was getting the balloon test done because of the weather. We have that now. So we're hopeful that we can get it to the point of a public hearing, county referral. And hopefully get some type of decision in the next 2 to 3 months.
So you're willing to send us a letter that you're extending it for the 3 months?
Yes,
Okay.
so whatever
I
it
think that's reasonable.
stops at, I'll do the 3 months from that date and I'll send that.
Told you several months ago, we would move diligently, hire the people we needed to hire and
You
get
did.
moving in.
Absolutely.
You see what we're doing.
Yeah, so 3 months, I'll send that letter. I will send it to you, copy Dave on it, Dave Gordon,
Thank you.
okay?
Yep.
So,
Anybody have anything else?
Yeah, I've got a couple of things, just looking ahead towards, since David brought up color green. What are you gonna present us with options of what the antenna could look like? We touched on, you know, a Frankenpine, for lack of a better word, at some point,
Or
not,
socks.
or socks or whatever. I don't know what those options are. I'm guessing none of us know what those, or the public know what sort of options are available to make this less visually impactful.
Yeah.
So at some point, we're gonna need to know that in order to make.
sure, I could have somebody submit something, but, honestly, what's being proposed now is the least visual impactful, because if you wanna build a 160-foot tree with 12-foot branches coming out from,
I'm not saying that Frankenpine is the best thing, but I know that there are socks and other colors and things like that that would make it. That's what I've heard, that there are.
I can try to have something written up. I think the reality is, I don't know that there's, I've never seen the socks done.
Oh, they're quite common. If you
Yeah,
start looking, you'll see them.
I'm only saying because you're adding a color, dark color to the top of the tower, whereas when it's the tower is proposed to be galvanized gray. And if you want it painted, it can be painted. However, we don't recommend that because you gotta pick the color.
What about corian? I've seen some towers with, what is it, corian steel, that rust color, then they have, instead of the white panels, they have a brown sock, so everything blends.
I've seen it. I've seen one on the thruway.
There
And
you
I
go.
notice it every time I
There
go
you
by,
go.
I say, did that.
The one
It's
by
a mess.
Harriman? The one by Harriman? Going south?
No, the one I'm thinking about is more closer to, yeah, think of the
Whatever,
mile mark.
okay.
It's
So
a-
just the, you know, with the eye on, you know, answering these questions in advance, you know, giving us more information. And then the only other question I had about this was, are there any physical methods to dissuade birds from nesting or whatever on them?
I don't know if you could put owls, like the fake owls up there, you see, I know we did that on one of the cell towers in Schenectady because it was a parking lot and the birds were literally defecating on the cars and they put an owl up nearby them. So it's something I can ask.
Yeah, I don't know if.
No, it's a good question.
There are any methods other communities use to dissuade birds.
Yeah, and I'll find that out.
Okay.
But and also on the visual, would it be appropriate to wait to see what your consultant says?
I was just gonna say, Dave, we spoke to Matt Allen about what kind of mitigation is he gonna come up with?
Well, we don't know there's an impact yet.
That's,
No, we don't.
So we're not, we have to mitigate an impact. I think it's important that board say what's on your mind, but you do have a consultant that's supposed to get back to us in 2 weeks to tell us what impact
You're right.
he sees, and he's done this
We're
before.
assuming there's an impact.
So as landscape architect firm, they can certainly make recommendations. I think it would be on my sort of parallel professional view of this. If there is a visual impact, it's probably about the background that it's gonna be against, which would affect how you'd mitigate it. I mean, is the background gonna be a ridge line or is it gonna be the sky? I don't know if any of those are true yet.
Right.
But I do think Matt's expected to tell you that. We have flagged the question to Bruce Barber about migratory birds, so. My initial research was, the primary concern is lights on towers, they attract birds. It's been documented, right? And you're not proposing any lights.
no lights are required.
I don't know at this point you would ever go high enough there, because there's no aviation need to light it.
No, when you hit 200 feet or taller, you have to automatically do it,
Right.
but Or you have to do it if it's lower than 200 feet, if you're within a certain glide slope of the airport, and I don't know that you're within that distance here.
What's Ellen
So,
close?
I think we did a tow air
Close, but-
study that shows that we don't do anything with it.
Okay,
I have a question.
Yes.
Report, when are, did you say our comments on the submittal are due the 9th, by the 9th?
Well, that's when you're getting your consultant.
That's when their
comments.
comments.
Well, that's when we've asked them to. One has said it's gonna be tight.
we asked him for
Oh, that
the
was
info
Matt.
by the 9th, by June 9th.
He's gonna try. He's gonna try.
Do we have a due date for our comments? Is it the same date? Or do we have
We're,
more
we're
time?
gonna have plenty of time to get everything. Once we get their comments, it's
We
not
have
like,
to review that.
we have multiple meetings that we'll be talking about this.
Okay,
Well, I'm not sure I understand you. Could,
I just wanted to know how much time I have to review. Sounds like I have a few weeks.
you have a lot of time.
Okay, great.
Because we don't even have it yet, but when he gives it to us, hopefully on the 9th, figure at least 2 weeks to go through. it.
Okay.
Yeah. All right,
Sounds good.
good. Anybody else? All right, let's,
When do you want to see us again? Not the 9th, I'm assuming?
how about a year from now? Oh, it's shot clock.
I didn't want to say.
Well, not the 9th.
Right.
Because we have 5 public hearings.
Yeah, I don't think I want to be.
So- Why don't we consider, depending upon when we get our responses from our guy, I'll let you know. No earlier than the 23rd, probably the first meeting of July.
If we can shoot for the 23rd, that'd be helpful. Good to keep moving.
We got a lot on the 23rd, too, but I hear you.
Okay.
So
We'll
let's
be in
tentatively.
communication then.
Sorry,
We'll be in communication. then?
yes,
Okay.
yes,
Very good, thank
yes,
you.
thank
For
you.
your time, we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dan, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Next on the agenda is the fellows from Pine Grove. Moshe,
How are you?
you're on.
Hi, how are you?
So, this is the time to speak about Pine Grove. And I don't know that I necessarily need to give an update on this. I think. Moshe, the maps that you gave us, there are large new maps over there on that table. There's no map set at your place, so the maps are over there if you want to fetch a copy. Yeah, do you feel free to get a copy? Moshe, I think it's really important that you or Mr. Khalees give us an update, sales pitch, whatever you want to call it, to let us know where we're at. I know where we're at, but I want you to tell the board, they have bits and pieces of it, or maybe the whole story. But why don't you give them an update of where we're at, what we've accomplished so far? Some of the changes that you did make to the facade. And let's just see where we go with that.
We have the piece of it. So we made copies of the facade. Yeah.
We have copies of that.
We also have color
Where's the
copies
copy?
here.
That's what I wanted to say.
The copies of the facade.
Oh, not bad. Yeah, they really are.
Okay, fire away, Moshe.
All right, let's start.
Mike, okay, Mike.
We've been before you several times before. This is the former Pine Grove site. In the R5 zoning district, it's 117-acre parcel located on both sides of Cherrytown. Excuse me, the applicant is proposing a 22,000 square foot footprint of the building, a total floor of 50,000 square feet approximately. We were asked what the principal use of it will be a dining hall and a new kitchen with accessory uses listed on the cover page of the plan, which will include social and recreational uses if they can be put in depending on the cost of the kitchen and the dining facility. The site currently has 2 Ulster County Department of Health permits, one for 126 unit residents, and then another one for 570 person camp. It has a Speedies permit.
So
Which
is the 120, you said 126 and 500 something, is the
Yes,
126?
126 units. excuse me, a room,
Okay,
units, a
thank
room, however you wanna put it.
Right.
And then 570 persons.
Okay.
It has a speedies permit that it'll discharge through 6 outfalls, a total, a permitted volume of 27,400 gallons per day. It's, once again, like I said, it's pretty straightforward application. We've tried to meet all the conditions and requests of the board.
So let me just, I got a couple of questions about what Mike. What the applicant was told is just there's gonna be no change in the water usage or the septic outfall. And we've seen in the plans evidence of that. So the plans that were presented to us are for a dining hall to replace the existing dining hall. And all the extra room that we had been asking for, we did get from Mr. Calise and from Moshi an indication of what that extra space would be used for. And it didn't seem to me in the explanation that any of that would add any increased people, therefore increasing the water usage or the outfall, the septic outfall. So if everybody's okay with that, which I'm just going to assume that that's the case, there was nothing in any of the plans that would suggest anything other than that. You even indicated that there would be absolutely no new residential in that new building. It would all be either space used by for the recreation of the people that are there already, office space. There were a whole series of things you gave us as possibilities. Used by the existing people, so I'm okay with that. Dave, do we need, since there is no impact to water or septic, do we need to request for no other reason than paper the file, copies of their operating permits from the county? Is it prudent to do that, or it really is?
Well, just, I don't remember, I'd have to paraphrase, but I think your site plan regs just say you're supposed to know what the type of water and sewer services are.
Okay,
So if you get those permits on file, that would be more than enough.
can we get those permits?
Yeah, we have the DEC permits.
Can we get them?
We can give you a summary of the permit number. And-
Provide the actual permits,
And
please.
of course. No, I have copies of all the permits, you just can get them submitted in time.
If you could just send them.
No problem. We'll
Okay.
transmit those to you. no
Because
problem.
they'll cite plans, they'll cite conditions, et cetera. It would be helpful for the
So-
board to know.
And actually, we're hoping for a reduction in the amount of water sewage that's created by the introduction of water saving fixtures, because the current kitchen is honestly quite dated, as well as the restroom facilities and the.
So
being
if I recall, you or Moshe mentioned that the last time you were here, you're gonna put all water saving devices in a new building. So that would be very helpful. Okay, there's a lot that's been going on. We've visited, there were some visits made by some people to talk about the architecture and all that, so I'm gonna keep quiet. Alina, Dave Roberts, do you want to comment on those visits?
Sure, I mean, before, I have a question, which is the current dining and kitchen, what is that gonna be transformed into?
Common area,
Sorry?
common area.
Common area, yeah. So Helena and I met with you, we made some recommendations as to the fact that what we looked at before was a singular mass. And we asked that that elevation be broken up into sections so that it wasn't just one long singular facade. And that's what we see in the new elevation that he's provided. And the other thing is that we looked at colors. Yeah, I have it here. Yeah, thank you. Actually, yeah.
You know what?
Yeah.
Do you have an extra copy?
There is,
have it.
yeah.
They're floating around, Rick.
Okay. Thank you much.
And then the other thing is that we Moshi allowed Helena and I to review the colors for the stucco, and we selected the color that we felt was closest to the existing buildings that are there.
And is that what we're seeing
And
here?
that's what you
Yeah.
see there,
Okay.
yeah, so, you know, it's.
Yeah,
Probably
it's
looked
kind
a
of a-
little more white there than it actually is, but.
It's almost like the color of the wall behind us.
We went for the darkest, of
Yeah.
the samples that were provided, we went for the darkest
Just kind of.
white we could,
Yeah.
that he had provided, that he was considering.
Yeah, and we met, we looked at the existing buildings there.
Then it met with the ironstone.
So, we feel like, well, I'll talk for myself, I feel like, Rashi and his team have been very responsive to our recommendations for the changes to the building. I think that your elevation isn't really helped by the fact that, from the road, there is trees and some vegetation which will help to shield it as well. And also, the context of this, I will say, when you look at this, it does look like a huge building, but within the context of the campus and the other buildings there, it's not as intrusive or massive. And
Is there some way of portraying that, Moshe, for when we get to the public hearing? So that you would have a picture of both the shielding from the plants that you either have there or you're gonna put, as well as to put it in the context of the whole site. So people, because this does look like, it looks like a mini Pentagon building.
Wait, excuse me, Dave.
But to put it in the context of the whole project for the public hearing would give everybody a sense of size relative to everything else. Is that doable?
I have one problem with that. I tried to bring down a special photographer with that drone. There is so much trees. When I met with the board members, it was inside. So it wasn't so a tree. When you are on the road, you really see like everything is full with trees. It's almost impossible to put it on site, a building. I really tried.
Yeah, we had asked you
Yeah.
to, that was one of our comments, is if you could put it in context with the other buildings, because getting ready for a public hearing. And I guess that's.
Ask your camera guy.
From the road and hopefully superimpose the front elevation on the photo, so it'll give you an idea what the existing. That's, we can try it.
That would be helpful. Are you familiar with it? I might be way off base, but there's a radar technology called LiDAR. And it's both overhead but you can do side swipe with it. And what it does, it allows you, it's multiple layers of photographs that are taken using the radar, and you can peel away different layers to see what's behind it. It's used in the Amazon to detect old civilizations. They take a picture from a couple 100 feet of everything, and they're able to, because there's so many radar waves going in there, they can peel away different levels, get rid of the trees and see the ground.
Helena doesn't believe you.
No, about the use of LiDAR, I don't think it's.
You can't use it from the side?
Application is.
Okay.
would be
I'm just
considered
babbling,
else.
forget it.
Sorry. No poker face, huh?
I can always count on.
You have LiDAR image for the whole county,
Yeah,
but it's planimetric.
Right.
Okay,
It's not
I just thought I'd throw that in there. Thanks, Helena.
it looks straight down.
Right.
But by all
Well,
means,
you
we'll
keep
try to
thinking,
get
you
some.
know, sometimes
If you
thinking
can
out
get
of the
something,
box,
it'd be
but
great.
you're trying to think of how can you provide, because if you provide this to a public hearing, people are gonna go, oh my God, and so if you have, as we mentioned, if you have this and in context with the other buildings, it just will help with your approval, you know.
It will help people
And
understand.
understand and
the reality.
visualize what you're planning on doing,
All right, I will do my best.
if you can.
Okay.
What
What
had
else?
that drone footage when we were there? Was it drone footage that you got from the?
I tried with that. I bring down a photographer with a regular camera, but it was just trees when he stand on the road right
Oh.
across. So then he tried with his drone to go on and make like a top view. But it's on a hill, the old building, and the trees also, all trees, big trees. It was impossible to put the old building and propose new building on.
Well, what about hand drawn? Like a schematic
A
somehow.
rendering,
Yeah, I mean, you
something
could go
like
old school with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chart pack tanks,
Yeah.
clear print.
Okay, motion, what else? I know, well, I do have something else. You and I talked about this. And Peter, it'll eventually involve you. You do need to know what to do in terms of safety. If there were a fire there or some sort of event. So we need something, how are you gonna approach an evacuation? Where's everybody gonna go? It needs to be laid out to the point of even, running through drills. If there were an event that required ambulances or fire trucks, where the fire truck's gonna go. The whole 9 yards. I can't imagine.
The fire department comment on the site plan, and we can address and meet their comments.
I think a few options, a few good options. I think we should discuss this with the fire chief and see what the best option.
So Peter, when you get back from vacation,
Yeah.
could you reach out to Moshe and just
Yeah.
do what we've done for some others and just see if we can come up with something that will.
If you like, we'll transmit the plans to you later this week, early
Okay.
next week, this way you can digest them a little bit. When we get back from vacation, perhaps we can meet and go over them.
Okay.
The life safety within the building is an architectural issue, right? It's not really a site engineer, civil engineers type of thing. But the evacuation plan and that stuff, of course, I'm sure they'll take your input on it. That won't be a problem.
Yeah, the one thing I had is, because there is the sort of less defined future space for recreation downstairs. Just making sure that that's all that is considered future use for egress when you do it.
Right.
Right, so that, depending on whether you use it for, I know there was talk about yoga studio and exercise rooms and things like that, just to make sure that all that egress is considered in your original plan, because it's gonna save you aggravation down the road.
Understood.
And did you decide that you were gonna put elevator shafts in there?
I put up an elevator shaft. I think you told me, or one of the board members, that it's something about the code. It's a code of the building.
Well, I'm not a
Put
code
shaft.
expert, so I leave that to Mike.
Yeah.
But if New York State code requires an elevator for that, you have 2.5
It's
floors.
an architectural issue, but I'm sure just for egress alone, it would probably be required.
So I put the shaft for the elevator, yes. That's the answer.
Well, that's real important, because if you start building and the building department comes over and says, where's the elevator shaft, you're screwed.
So
You
of
don't have
course I
it
have a
there.
shaft.
So you need somebody to make sure that everything, that the size of the doors for evacuation are up to code. that
ADA has to be, what, ADA?
ADA, I mean, you gotta, Mike, I don't have to tell you,
Understood.
you're an expert in the site plan, but the actual building specs
And the
need to.
sidewalks have to meet ADA, the curb ramps have to meet the ADA, so the building to me would be more stringent with the ADA requirements in the site. So absolutely. But
Okay, so
once again, we can give you a summary of what the ADA.
I'm not, it's not our job to review that
No, it's
because it's too complex, but we're suggesting it. When it comes to evacuation, it becomes important that the doorways are wide enough according to code.
Oh.
That's changed over the years. Whatever they used to be, 24 inches is not, or 26. That's not acceptable anymore. It's much larger than that. Peter knows better than I do. But anyway,
No, understood. I'm sure the
Okay.
architect's well aware of the ADA requirements as well as the fire egress requirements.
Helena?
I have one other comment. You are going to change the delivery entrance, correct?
Correct.
So the delivery entrance is going to be across from the only home he does not own.
Correct.
I'm concerned about noise, lighting, et cetera, impacts to that residence. Don't know what you can do, but I don't know if anybody's seen the plans or noted that. But it will be, it's a quiet road. Don't, it's a big restaurant, it's change in the entrance and the trucks, et cetera, are gonna be coming right in front of this person's house. So, don't know, can't ask you, I don't know what I'm asking you, but I just see it as an impact, a potential impact. So if it can be addressed somehow, keeping the gate closed except when deliveries come, or deliveries come at a certain time. But you can see the impacts it would be to that residence.
This is a very good important thing. How you can see by our existing kitchen deliveries, there is a motor gate.
Okay,
There's also certain timing where they can come and.
so you could do the same thing.
We can do the same thing, take the motor gate to this and they come in and we need to open it to go out, so we have
Right.
control, that's a good idea.
Yeah,
Will do.
well, you know, I'm just anticipating comments from the neighbor.
All right. Keep a note.
And Mike, I know that some of the plans deal with lighting, so on and so forth. Greg, have you reviewed lighting?
I have not reviewed the lighting plan on this, so I came. But I wasn't sure to what extent planning board wanted me to.
Well, I think
Review.
we're at the point now that we
Okay.
know what the fascia is gonna look like. And presumably, Mike, the lighting plan that you have here is pretty much,
A lighting consultant is hired to prepare the plan. So
Okay.
if there's any comments or concerns, we'll of course address it with the consultant.
so Greg, you need to get the whole site plan on a PDF and go through what you would normally go through.
Okay.
It's lighting. And parking, there's no additional parking, it's just for the trucks. The electrical and utilities, that has to meet code, you don't necessarily need to go through that. So I think it should primarily,
Landscaping, I don't, that would be the only other, but that, a lot of that is really to the discretion.
well, there is some landscape,
Line of cypress.
there is landscaping, but the lighting, to Helena's point, I didn't catch that. If there is gonna be some impact on a neighbor, you just need to.
Okay.
Okay, so let's take a look at that. Anybody have anything else?
Peter, do we wanna reschedule the site visit?
Yeah,
Oh,
I have
okay,
the notes to do that.
yeah.
Oh, you did, oh, right.
so we have some people who still need to go on a site visit.
I need to apologize. I'm sorry, I was confused with 2 dates. And I'm so sorry about it.
No, it's okay.
I'll make note to put dates, exact dates with the days and the time more clear, and that might be some of my confusion, so I apologize for that.
Thank you so much.
So I have just a procedural question with the construction, demolition, construction, because you're tearing down some stuff and then also building, right? So what are you gonna do in that transitional time with your guests at that point for food, and he's still gonna be operational in the old one?
The kitchen and the dining hall will have to be operational until the new facility go, right?
Correct, so on the site plan, you can see what is going to, what we are going to demo.
Yeah,
It's just like a corner, a freezer and storage. I'll need to take one room, maybe for storage.
yeah,
And then I have another freezer, I will push, whatever I will do, what I do, gotta
accommodate,
do.
but you're gonna keep, you have to keep on serving
So,
while you're doing the construction.
correct, so what I'm going to demo is not, it's just like a freezer and storage, that's it.
Yeah, okay,
It's not a big area.
Yeah.
So do we want to set a date for Peter, for you and Jennifer to be able to get up there? You want to get up there, Hans, to the 3 of you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anytime.
Will we, so Peter comes back?
yeah, the week of the 9th.
So with the 3 of you just talk to agree with a date for with Robin, and then Robin will get a hold of you and give you the date. Robin, you'll take care of that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Anything else?
I have a question about the construction entrance. Do they come in through the existing entrance and go around, or is there a new entrance?
No, they're gonna come off of Cherrytown Road for the construction entrance.
Is it an existing entrance or is it? a new one?
There is an existing.
There is,
entrance, so-
okay.
So.
Here.
That's all existing.
Yeah.
There's a large gravel, Jennifer, there's a large gravel parking lot there right now.
Site visit.
It's plus you're in contact and friendly with the adjoining neighbor, right? That was mentioned earlier.
Across the
At
street,
least that's what you told us, that
yes,
you're in direct contact with that neighbor now.
correct.
Okay. I think we should set a public hearing. Does anybody object to that?
No, I think.
Yeah.
I make a
Maybe-
motion to set up a public hearing on June 9th.
Did you know I was thinking about that?
We have the visuals available in advance, whatever the public hearing is.
What means the visuals,
For the-
The
yes,
rendering. and-
Yeah,
I will do.
yes.
All right, so
We won't be able to do,
won't be able
we won't be able
to
to do our site visit.
In
Before-
time, okay,
yeah,
well,
before-
denied.
I mean, I'm okay with it as long as we leave it open until we do our site visit.
Okay.
I'm fine with
I'm
that.
fine too.
I don't think we're gonna finish a public hearing in one meeting. So,
Unless, I don't wanna steamroll anyone, but
That's
All
fine.
right, so Helena made the motion. Second,
I'll second.
Dave, all in favor?
I,
Aye. 6-0. Yeah, I think it's important everybody get up there.
That's a priority
I
to.
think the biggest thing is what you have available for the public to look at, so they can get the feel for the building and the context of the whole property. And then the safety plan. And we can work on that over the next month. Work on that together.
And I'd also like to look at the permits as well before the public hearings.
Mike, public here,
I'd like to look at the permits before we.
No, we'll transmit them to the board, that's not a problem.
okay. Yeah, I have that down that you're gonna get into as well. Anything else? Okay,
All right.
all right.
Thank
So
much. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank you.
getting this done.
It's yours.
Oh.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a nice day.
You as well.
Thank you. Yeah, no, you can sit right there. We need, like.
The board need 5 minutes,
oh, God, yeah.
5-minute break.
Verbal to you though.
So just make a note to yourself and make sure we get this.
I did, I made it
At the visit nailed down this way. The site visit. Stay one.
The D spot, it's not.
So,
Time, the date again.
just gotta know this.
Right, so I'll just.
Tigers
I'm going to do that and reiterate it.
Exceeded his authority.
You may have given too many options. I got confused. I don't know.
I narrowed it down to 2,
Okay.
but I could see. I could maybe.
See cautious.
Oh,
What are you opinion on not hearing?
you have to bring up the Google Drive for Verizon.
Oh, apparently there's a mining.
Oh.
I forgot. It's metals, it's state of West.
This on,
It's on sacred land, tribe, horse and sheep.
You know, I can't wait to get community collab.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that it's done right.
Yeah, totally, yeah.
So, but it'll
Alleviate
alleviate some of this,
Oh,
because this is nuts.
Yeah.
I even suggested if you should get it.
Jeff, why don't you come on up with the applicant? We're just taking 5 minutes.
You get it going and up and transfer what you wanna see for the public and then. And that would alleviate all those spoil requests.
Yeah.
And then you. You can categorize, what you wanna see and. Thank you. I got it.
Good.
You know what I mean?
Right?
Something
Yes.
else. I don't know what it was. I was like, the sooner the better. Have another.
Jeff, you have 7 here?
ones. Weed,
3, 6, 7, yeah.
Landon, that's.
Is this digitally?
These
Oh,
are
I'm sorry.
new maps.
Is it digital yet?
We have the digital on these already.
Where is it?
And we have a scanner.
It's on your Google Drive. Yes, it's in there.
Scanning. them.
The issue was
Oh,
the physical maps we
You
had,
need one for Zorian?
we'll hold on to it.
And you can see.
Keep it fresh.
Plug it
The
in.
issue, Dave, was
Public to see, just.
the original
Some, everybody-
physical maps were the 7th of May, but the digital was the 22nd. So these are now the 22nd. And you have that to
If I
that.
go right now, it's.
If you go there right now, it's there. It better be there.
Still has to. Do public house.
Yep. I'm sure you have it. Let me know if you don't.
It's not in there.
It's not in there.
I don't. It's a totally different folder.
You're looking at the maps. Looking at maps.
And map, the most recent map is.
Yeah, we've got.
Mine.
Did these just show up?
Yeah.
But that may be mine too. So I apologize. Thought I got it in there.
Is it anything?
What are the other files you got? You got maps?
Class, location, religion.
No, it should be there. All right.
What are you missing here?
The PDF of the map dated 5/22.
I thought I saw it.
I thought I could put it in the Google Drive.
I didn't see it in there on that. I didn't see it, maybe I missed it.
I'm looking right now, I don't see it.
You know, see if Peter, do you see it?
You know, I saw, I might be making it up.
Most recent map break is April 9th.
Okay, then that's my bad. All right, so for the purposes of tonight, I didn't get the PDF of 5/22. I received it on Thursday or Friday, and I thought I put it up there Saturday. But what you had, what Jeff just handed out is exactly that, and I'll make sure the PDF gets up. Sorry. So we'll have to go the old fashioned way. All right, Jeff, why don't you tell us where we's at?
Evening. Again, I talked about the use of the Ridgeview property for this summer and going forward. Be a part of the house of worship, which will include a maximum of 172 occupants, including the boys that will be at the facility, the staff and their families. The primary use will be during the summer. There'll be some weekend usage starting on a Thursday going through Sunday. Again, that's 172. We don't anticipate as large numbers during the non-summer months, but the max will be 172. The primary source of transportation to go to and from the facility will be by school buses that will not be parked at the facility, but will just be dropping off the students. There will be small daily buses take care of the children of the staff to go to whatever camp they're going to be going to. And that's the only daily use. Other than that, there'll be a bus in at the beginning of the summer and a bus out. Actually, I think we said 5 or 6 buses to cover.
So just one round trip during the summer, except for staff.
Yes, one round trip.
So nobody leaves at that whole time. Everybody stays there continuously.
Everybody will be staying there at the facility. Right.
Camp in the summer, resort in the winter.
Correct. Well, not really a resort. Again, it's just really gonna be a long weekends. Where they may come up for study sessions, etc. But
Just reading what's on the plan.
Thursday, basically Thursday till Sunday would be good. I'm hopeful that we've now resolved the water issue with the Board of Health. And basically, the Board of Health, I believe, has viewed this use similar to the other religious camps that are in the area, and 55 gallons per day was sufficient as long as the facilities had water saving devices. I've booked for tomorrow morning, tried to get them there today before this meeting, a certified plumber to look at all of the facilities within it, toilets, sinks, etc. And he will give this certification of those units, if they are all water saving devices, and those that aren't, we've directed him to please replace them, and we'll bring in confirmation that that's been done.
So, can we start with there?
Sure.
In terms of the questions the board has, let's start with the water. So the 55 gallons, I think everybody's on board, assuming water saving devices. So you're gonna get somebody up there to confirm water saving devices.
Mhm.
And so is it my understanding that this plumber is gonna look at every room, because every room has a bathroom, has a shower, has a sink, so toilet, sink, shower, is also going to examine the kitchen and whatever other appurtenances or rooms have some sort of water dispersing device. And he's gonna what I'd like to see, because we want to see proof, what I'd like to see is the count. And how many of them are water saving and how many are not. And then a plan of how they're gonna be made into water saving devices. My hope is that most of them are water saving devices.
Well, my hope is all, you know, that's a hope.
You know, and if they're not, we're gonna have to talk about how do we ensure that they become water saving devices? You know, is that going to be signed in blood? Is it gonna be a bond that we hold? It's something to ensure that it gets done. Because it's important, and I'm not gonna go any further. So, board have any questions about water saving devices?
Just,
Done
they
about-
need to be code compliant, and I don't know if we dictate that in our code or if it's by the state.
I think
code.
it's whatever the state,
can't
New York
remember.
State
Yeah,
code would
yeah.
be. We don't dictate enough.
So that-
The only question I have is because there's so many buildings, that would be required of every building on there.
Yes,
including-
every building.
Including the houses, right?
Well, that's a good point. I forgot about that.
Great point.
Jeff,
Yes.
Peter asked, is it gonna be for every building? Yes, every building,
Yeah,
72,
he's gonna go through.
72 bedrooms.
Yeah.
But also the two single-family homes,
Only one,
there's two.
the other one is abandoned,
I can't hear you.
the other one is abandoned.
Is it what?
Abandoned.
But it still has, you're gonna use it, right?
No.
You're not gonna use it. So you're gonna board it up, you're gonna
So which one is it?
decommission it?
Calm down.
So which one is it on the map?
Which one is it?
It's the one next to the pool.
Bottom left, on the map.
So there are two single families homes.
It says to be
Both to
renovated.
remain.
They both say to remain.
Yeah.
The one says to remain, the other says to be renovated.
Right.
This one says to be.
What does it say, Greg?
To be renovated.
Okay, so it sounds like both are gonna be used. One is remaining, one is being renovated.
Might be gonna change
It has to come down probably.
It has to come down.
We'll change it on the plan after they've confirmed.
I mean, either which way, if you're gonna
Yeah,
use it,
yeah.
okay. So, and just have the plan correct in terms of. It's gonna be condemned, it's gonna be decommissioned, just
Yeah.
needs to be on the
So it's
correct
not
on the
gonna be
map.
used right away.
Okay, the board have any other questions about water,
Yes.
Helena?
In your sewage report, you provided an attachment from the DEC regarding permit number 3-5144. 00064-1, which is, the general permit is, issued in 2007, was for a groundwater discharge of 9,000 gallons per day. Could you please provide us with the permit in its entirety?
Rick. Water entity too, then, you know, not just the sewer.
Yeah, I'll have to look into that, make sure we have the entire thing.
Well, yeah, make sure it's in your name, it's been transferred from Veritas Villas, I don't think, okay, well, the board would like to see what's in that. And what conditions and what plans are cited in the permit.
And while we're at it, the appropriate water. System operating permit from the county, when that's, if it's been issued or if when it gets issued, we wanna see that.
Except for
The water permit. I guess they called it a water, the letter from the county referred to, or from the boss, Laura or something or another, referred to it as the water operating permit. So we wanna see that too. Okay. Anybody else on water?
So there
Septic?
was, I don't know if this ties into the water supply, but I think it ties into the septic, and it's the
Mhm.
design standards for kitchen and cooking. Because I understand that there's the gallons per day per person, but if you look at the 2014 design standard document, there's an asterisk that refers you to, if it's overnight stays, that refers you to another table for water use for kitchen and food facilities. And that is not incorporated in the 60 gallons per day, and I don't recall if it's a per person per day, but it's an additional calculation.
It's in the report, for 3 gallons per day per meal.
So Jennifer, in one of the letters that we got from Barry. If you hold on a second, I'll tell you the date. There was a letter that we got from Barry where he enumerated.
3 gallons per person.
Would you look for Dave?
Per meal, so it's 9 gallons per day.
9 gallons.
Here it is.
Per person per day
Per day.
to
It's
cover the meal.
his email of 5/16. Of 6:46, I assume that's 6:46 at night. Or it might be 6:46 AM. And what he refers to is.
I vaguely remember seeing that, but
And it has something in here for laundry. Food service. Which is 3 gallons per meal. There's a whole list of, take a, if you can't find it, let me know and I'll send it.
to what the design standard has for. it,
Correct.
And to see how.
So just see if it jives with the design standard.
I'll just leave it at that then.
And you've dealt with Caleb already, right? So feel free to give Caleb a call if,
Okay.
so.
Sure.
Caleb, I'm happy to see you. I'm happier to see you than Barry, because I love Barry, but it's like, so
Still very important.
anyway. Barry, just a little bit of history, and correct me where I've got it all wrong, Jeff, but Barry claimed that based upon his 40 years of experience, the numbers that he quoted in this email that I just quoted are valid, which come up to about 55 gallons, somewhere around there, actually 48, but 55 gallons per day per person. To which I cryptically commented, yeah, okay, I don't want to see that. And the county letter suggests 55, but only with water saving devices. So that's why we're being so, and I appreciate, Jeff, that you're gonna get us the information. That's why we're being so priggish about, fine, but prove to us that there are water saving devices. For all I know, this well could service the entire town of Rochester or not. I just want to make sure, we just want to make sure that nobody in the area has any issue because too much water is being drawn.
Well, that's a different issue, but the wells have a very large capacity. I don't think the well, amount of water coming is not the issue. More of the septic system would be, you don't want to inundate the septic system with too much water. That's the big concern, not
Yeah,
the water.
you're limited, according to that DEC, it's 9,000 gallons per day.
And that letter,
9,500.
that letter that was included as an
It's
attachment.
9,500.
Well,
9,500.
Rebecca Christ's letter, she
Oh.
stated 9,000.
Oh.
Dean Palin's letter said 95, so that's another reason why we want to look at the permit.
Gotcha.
Well, and if you look at that letter as well from 2007, it indicates that they were designing for 125
25, right.
per person per day, which is, I recognize that was a long time ago. Things may have been upgraded, but that was the original design, was 125 gallons per day per person. So if we're adding more people, we want to make sure the septic and everything.
So Caleb, we're counting on you clearing up all the confusion. And ask Barry to go on vacation.
He is on vacation.
Oh, good. That's why you're here. Okay, Jeff, I only have 2 other major items. And they may be okay, whatever. I saw that where you amended the narrative. Having to deal with the water point, so we've got that. The safety plan, Peter, got me the safety plan last week. I shot it over to you either Thursday or Friday of last week. I believe that's when I got it to you. So we just wanted some indication, if you can right now, what you're gonna do with that safety plan and how are you going to incorporate those recommendations into your larger safety plan?
So I got a lot of, I read through the whole recommendation, what you sent over. And I did incorporate most of the stuff. The other stuff was just basically a maintenance crew to put on. It's not like push bars and stuff like that. It's in there that there's gonna be push bars, but to install it or whatever, that portion I did not add into the site. But the rest stuff, like you mentioned, a couple of other stuff, like in detail on the safety plan. I added it into the safety plan,
Okay, I know you said,
like the
Jim,
maps, on every door.
okay,
I like the maps on every dorm room and the hallways. I did put it in that it's gonna be there. that it's
Okay.
Gonna be in there. And you just, another few that how we should do it or whatever. I don't remember exactly. And I left the recommendations for myself or whatever is cool to do it. But a part of the safety that we have is gonna get.
okay, thank you. Debbie, you sent an email, I didn't check it, was that the revised safety plan that was attached?
Yeah.
It was revised, okay, I haven't had the chance to check it against the other one, but. And we were up there today with the district chief, myself and the. Mike Bannock, the fire inspector, to look at assembly points, and so I'm gonna have a separate email recommendation about that.
Were there issues?
Yeah, recommendations.
Issues.
No, I think that, you know, like there are 4 points of assembly that you had established in your evacuation plan. And one of them is just, it's, wouldn't be really good because there's not enough room to evacuate people safely away. It's also adjacent to where the sprinkler pre-connects are. So that's like, you know, if there was a fire, then that would be a bad place to have people. So I think we went from 4 assembly points to 3, 2 in the front of the building, one on the Ridgeview side, one in front of the house, and then one in the back parking lot.
I didn't want to put a back parking lot because I thought all the trucks are gonna come in. and-
They are, yeah, but the adjacent, there's that road there, but that's a good place to, but there's also a big field back there too.
I didn't want to put it, there was a lot of trees over there, that's the only reason.
Yeah,
why.
There's like a pathway
I
that
know.
could be, so anyway, we'll, you know, I have that forthcoming, I'm gonna put that in.
Help from that field, I
Yeah.
didn't want to put it there because it's a lot, of trees.
Yeah.
If something happened.
Yeah,
So as soon as we can settle that,
Yeah.
that'd be great. I know Peter's on vacation next week, but then he'll be back, so you guys will talk and get those points into your final safety plan. And then the only other thing I had is, Jeff, I saw a note from you today before I came down here, where you answered Greg's points. So I don't know if Greg has even had a chance to look at them. He might have been traveling here already. But Greg, did you look, were you able to see them? Do you want time to comment on them?
Well, the responses are to my earlier letter, not to my most recent one.
Ah,
So,
okay.
most of them generally apply, but, you do have the May 27th one. And there wasn't much more,
Yeah.
but, I'll look at this and
Right.
incorporate. and-
I did do one amendment and I spoke about it today, which is including in the report, the whole concept with the water meter to make sure that there is a plan in place if they exceed their water use.
And that was part of the DOH letter. And then I minor comment, but I think it's very important, on the site location map, it doesn't accurately show the extent of the property. In the top right corner of the first page. Top right corner,
Top right corner. So,
we'll flip that part out. This is part of the property on Ulster County parcel viewer, and that's where your well is. So it's very important that that is correct, that is part of the property. That's
Is that where the well is, Kurt?
Yes,
One of them.
one of the wells.
That's, would be important to know that it's part of the company.
So, yes, so it's, I mean, I printed this off of particle viewer.
yeah, it's part of the viewer known to be. This here.
I think that, well, actually, I think the last page, the survey,
This is seven, it's over.
It shows,
Probably going all the way up.
correct. It's just on the location map, it doesn't show it as being part of the parcel. And so it's just important that it's accurately shown because that is what the well is and obviously that would not be good.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's a concern that it's not part of the property because it is shown on the survey. It just needs to be
Create on
correctly
the
shown
parcel.
on the location map.
Location.
So Jeff, would it be appropriate? If Greg to look at what you sent him and then just get back to you with all the remaining questions that he has, and we get answers to those. You had at one point in time mentioned to me about the ADA parking. And so
If that is,
you wanted him to regrade it or whatever.
ADA parking is very specific in the slopes. If that is in fact currently ADA parking,
And I think it is.
then
Why don't we leave it?
then I wouldn't challenge that per se. But if you're creating new ADA parking, it needs to be clearly shown that it's 2% grade and.
Is it existing, Jeff?
It is an existing.
Okay.
It is.
Okay, so I think we're fine with it. It's existing. But I would like to get anything else that Greg has on his map or in his comments, just get them answered. And Jeff, I also saw, it's just important to get all this stuff out of the way. And Jeff, I also saw you requesting a waiver. And we're fine with waivers. There's a procedure for the waiver. It's in the code. It simply says you list the item that you want waived, you know, section and number and all that. The reason why you want the waiver and the criteria for the reason, as I recall, is that it would have a material negative effect on what you're trying to accomplish. It makes no sense, you know, there's a whole bunch of, so just tell us, give us the criteria. And this becomes important for the landscaping. And this is just a heads up, Caleb is familiar with this from Accord Social. In the landscaping code, which you followed, and we put in some landscaping, you want to ask for waivers in terms of the size of the trees. What they put in the code was not appropriate in terms of the sizes, and Caleb can actually advise you with that. So if we get one memo with the list of waivers you want and the reason for the waivers, the board can handle that. And it's up to the board to say, we have no problem with it, or we do. Caleb, you know what I'm talking about with the landscaping, right? We went through this once before and we just have to, the code needs to be adjusted. So it'll save you money.
Yeah.
Because it's asking for trees.
You know,
That
and
big.
oftentimes, when a landscaping plan is in a code, it's almost like presuming that you are building a new development as opposed to taking existing buildings where there already is landscaping. I mean, they don't want you to remove landscaping to put in new landscaping,
Right,
so.
right. We don't want
we'll go
that.
through that.
You clean it up to the way appropriate, but they did include landscaping additions, which is great. I wouldn't use some of the things you're using, but that's okay.
Hey, Rick,
But, Dave?
you still want parking? You requested, you're proposed, you're gonna get a waiver for parking?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we basically were looking at what was suggested by your engineer and you know, again, this is a facility that's basically gonna be gotten to by buses and not by cars, so there's no reason to put all the areas that'll just lead to more you know, blacktop areas and impermeable spaces. There's just no need for that.
So that's one of those
I'm
things.
just noting it's different process. So in your waiver memo, you need to request a modification of the parking requirement. And there's 7 specific criteria that you need to meet at least one of, which again, reducing impervious surface is one. But it's not a waiver for parking.
Thank you, Dave.
It's 14017C.
I'm sorry, what's that again?
It's subsection C. It's the same section you cited, Jeff, in your email, but
Yeah.
read below that, there's some criteria. Just, my read is you have to hit at least one of them.
Okay.
What is the parking requirement for this? We know yet? We determined that?
I think it was 70. Was it?
Gray, do you remember what you cited?
I think it was 70.
I actually just cited they needed a
Yeah, I
parking
think I
table.
cited it. I'll have to go look.
But they came back with the parking table showing
Yeah, they've
one
got,
space per room. So 70 rooms, 70 spaces, and they've got 56.
56. There'd be a requirement for staffing as well.
and now you're gonna use both, you don't know if you're gonna use both single family houses.
Which one?
You probably only use one,
Only, yeah, one of the single family houses had their own driveway as well.
but it's
The one
included
that's
in the
up
occupancy, right?
Correct, but I don't think it's included in the driveway, what's counted as spots.
So with the
But
park,
there are spaces in both of those, as I recall, right? That,
In the single family, there is a parking space.
yeah, right. So they have plenty of parking.
I'm not really worried about the parking. It's just, to me, it's like you need a parking table
Right.
on the plan, and they have one now.
so Dave brought up the point of you do have staff there, so you need to. When you ask us for the adjustment to the parking.
Yeah.
There's gonna be something, you need something for stamping as well, so. Just tell us where you're gonna put the parking. For, if you have 70 spots, one per room, and you ask for 58, what about the people that work there? Where are you gonna park them?
Well, but the people in the room basically are kids, that most of them aren't driving. anyway, so it's back to the room. Yeah, we're averaging.
It's late at night.
That's what.
Just you're aware that if the representation, for example, that everybody's got, all the kids are gonna come on buses is part of the rationale for the waiver, it's also gonna become a condition of the
Yeah.
site plan approval.
Of course.
And so we're gonna have to work on that condition. It's not like everybody shows up in buses.
Right.
And then we have to work out a percentage or something like that, but that's what I've been advising the board is as there's conversations that seek to reduce some of the requirements. The facts that you're citing as justification will become requirements of the project moving forward.
But there's also the winter use is.
Well, we can
not
structure
kids-
as necessary.
Not kids on buses, right?
I anticipate also there'll be a lot of still the bus uses during the winter also.
And they were also saying there'll be fewer people, so however they want to structure it, whatever the representation is, those will be the conditions.
Okay, one of the things that came up on our visit today, our outside visit, was the idea of establishing a fire lane right in front of the building, because it's quite a distance from the driveway to the building. And we're in the front of the main double doors there,
That whole part
that whole part.
was, nobody parked there ever. I mean, it's not part of parking or anything. I'm gonna do a fire lane in there.
So we'll have signage for that.
Correct.
Yeah, so like there's a line of parking spaces, and there's a handicap spot or two, and then the walkway up to the front door.
Walkway out.
Yes.
No parking at all.
Yeah, but so one of the things that we talked about today with the district chief and fire inspector was the idea of establishing a fire lane there. Because it is a long way from the building for stretching a hose if we need it, so.
So you want to see that marked as a.
Yeah, so I'll put that in a letter to
Yeah, great.
memo from today, just to do that.
Anything else?
You should just correct your project title on the sheets.
All right.
Oh.
Sorry.
Bridger View,
Sorry, it's not here, so I got it.
wait, Bridger View Villages?
Yes.
Yeah. Is it Ridgeview Villages or is it Ridgeview Realty?
Says Bridger.
RIDGERVIEU.
I'm assuming that's Dave Whit, isn't that what you?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. Yeah.
Is it Ridgeview Villages or is it Ridgerville Realty? What is it? Just, thank you, Zoran.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. I need to use a red pen.
I found
Go ahead.
water stuff. Do you want me to say what I found?
I-
So I found the email from Barry, and the food was wrapped into the guest gallon per day. But the septic standards have that as a separate number. And this 2014 design standard is 15 gallons per day per employee. So there's like a separate number for staff. And there's a food service operations table, so you should tell us what you think applies, but there was a banquet hall there was one of the options, and that was 10 gallons per day per seat. And that was in addition to like whatever the facility uses per person.
You're saying that would be on top of?
That's how the septic design standard is structured. If you go to, let me see if I still have it open. So I'm
This is
looking,
where I would refer back to the health department's letters.
so I'm looking at. This is the New York State Design Standards for Intermediate Sized Water Wastewater Treatment Systems, March 5th, 2014. And it has just like the first 20 pages are just every possible use you could imagine with how to structure the design. And this document has a number per person for the use, and then there's an asterisk, and it directs you to other tables for additional, so.
I know what tables you're talking about.
So based on this, it's, you know, whatever it is per person per day for the use, but then the food service is in addition. And the staff is in addition.
So see, well, I would say that the, you know, one of the things they're saying was water saving devices, and that's where the 55 number comes in, where. Like a single family residence is 110 gallons per day per bedroom. And it's under the assumption that it's 2 people per bedroom. And so that's where you get this kind of 55 gallons per day number, and you wouldn't split out what you're doing in the kitchen.
Right, but this has very different numbers for camps and things like that. There's a host of uses, and all of those uses have an additional for food service. So if you look at the sentiment behind the document, the sentiment is that there is X gallons per day plus food service, and that's, if you look at all of the uses, whether that's a camp or a hotel or like, you know, any kind of overnight, anything, all of those have a footnote that the food service is an additional. So I'm not trying to like litigate it, but we
Yeah, I
have
understand.
a concern, and so if you disagree, then you should submit something that we can comment
Well,
on.
I disagree because the health department also agrees with 55 gallons per day. That, you know, that's kind of what you know, it's not just our
But
word
that's
or
for water
office.
use, that's not for septic design. Those,
Wow.
you have to go to DEC for your septic, and they're a different.
Well, that's why we want to see what the permit actually
Right.
says.
And the original, and where I'm coming from is that the original permit said 125 was what the septic was designed for.
Correct.
So we just need to figure it out.
And the DEC really relies on Ulster County Department of Health to create a flow confirmation letter. Is usually, you know, I'm waiting right now for flow confirmation letters for other projects, for Akron Social for one. Give it to DEC.
Right, but the flow confirmation letter from Ulster County with the signed by Dean Palin.
Yeah.
Used the 110, was it? Yeah,
125.
125.
But that's you know, that's. Again, using one of the charts to give you that number for a medical facility, not camp.
But the camp numbers were higher than 55. I mean, take a look and see what you think. I'm just.
Jennifer, is that, it's higher than 55 with or without water saving devices? Or does it matter because it's kitchen?
It doesn't stipulate, it just has a.
That was 2007.
Yes.
I believe.
So the 125 was from 2007.
Okay.
This is 2014.
It does stipulate though, because paragraph or 2 before the table, it refers to the table.
Mhm.
It says that you can take a 20% reduction
Okay.
off of all of those numbers.
Okay. Great.
If you have water saving.
If you have water saving
Right,
devices.
but that has yet to be determined.
Right, but that's where there's a little bit of a confusion between.
So can we agree, since that between Greg and Caleb and Jennifer, that you come up with a memo that says, here's what you agreed to. It sounds like we're there, but I don't want to maybe it's because it's late that I'm saying that. But it sounds like we're there because of the 20% reduction with the water saving devices. It sounds like
I
we're
think we
there.
just need, I think to your point, I think we need something in the
Just-
title.
Just
Right.
put it, the three of you, you know, up to this point, we've been whistling in the wind, right, or whistling past the cemetery, whatever the saying is. If we could just get people to sit down and put this on paper and agree. 2 paragraphs before it says you get 20% gimme because of water saving devices and you have water saving devices, or it doesn't say that. So 1, 2, 3, can we get that done? Quickly?
And then one last thing is on my comment number 5, it specifically states in the code that you have to reference the ISNA standards. So there needs to be a note on the plans that says that the lighting meets that.
Oh, okay.
That's it.
That's for Kara, no, but.
Yeah. So that not, I know that you did provide a lighting plan, but the code specifically references that standard.
So we'll make sure.
Okay, so with this water sewer septic thing, would you take the lead?
Yep.
All right. And then Jennifer, you
Yeah,
get involved.
let me know
Okay.
if you want to have a call or.
Anything else? What I'd like to do is just to set, I don't know whether you want to call it a tentative public hearing or a public hearing for the end of the month, which will be June 23rd. June 23rd. But everything we just talked about, water, septic, permits. Moving forward on the safety plan.
Yeah.
I gotta have those things. In such a state. That we can move forward with this public hearing legitimately. That we know where we're at with water and septic. So Jeff, is that acceptable?
Acceptable regarding what aspect? I'm looking to have the facility open in July 1st, I think it is. But there any public hearing on the 23rd of June, I don't see it possible.
The public hearing will be on the 23rd.
We meet all the requirements.
And we'll see what happens in the public hearing.
But you have to have everything in by the 9th, is that correct?
We're gonna need the material
Yeah.
in.
And I think it's really important that we drop dead day, so that we have time to review things.
Okay.
So Jeff, where I'm going with this, the 23rd, but I need this information done
You know,
by the 9th.
But it has to be by the 9th, because we have to have time to review this, you know, like the water and everything else.
now that we have a more limited, understandable list, we'll be able to meet that.
Well, I think we make great progress tonight.
You were terrific.
Huh?
You were terrific.
I'm glad Caleb was here.
While we're having this conversation, are we gonna have a site visit?
We never did accomplish the site visit, did we?
No, we did not.
Okay.
We have available at your convenience anytime between June. June 4th and the 13th.
We started to set up and it wasn't.
June 4th and the other day.
13th. I think next Monday and Tuesday.
Remember.
It's the holiday. Holiday next Monday or Tuesday, which except what won't those dates be, is that? May not be different.
But you've been.
Oh, the 4th is Monday?
Oh, see something.
Oh, okay, so any time between the 4th and 13th, roughly that Saturday.
Can we set that day as a?
The 4th through the 13th?
The 4th through the
Between the 4th
13th,
and the
but
13th.
eliminate Saturday, that would be a great day.
So why don't we pick,
Was Friday good?
why don't we pick the 4th?
I can't,
Well, can anybody make the 4th?
If we do it early in the morning,
All right, so let's, June 4th. What time early in the morning, 9 o'clock?
well, wait, I can't, I'm sorry, never
No,
mind. I can't
okay.
do it.
Anybody make the 4th? Nope, nope. Okay, how about the 5th? Nope.
Can we
6th,
do it the next week?
I could do it this, I can do it the sixth.
We did start
Or
trying to set.
June 6th, what time?
Uh,
9 o'clock?
I'd need well, I could be there for an hour at 9. Can we do
Sure.
earlier than 9?
June sixth at 9, we got Dave Roberts. Helena, Helena and Rick.
To 8 o'clock.
You want to do 8? I'll do
I'd
8.
love to do it.
8 o'clock, Helena?
June 6th.
Good, 8 o'clock. I'll give you a phone call. I'll buy you coffee.
Brisket.
Okay, 8 o'clock
Morning person.
on
but I-
June sixth. All right, let's go for some more dates. We got other people. How about the 11th, June 11th?
I can do that.
Can any of the other people do that? What time? 8?
I could do 8.
8? Okay, you're doing 8. Hans, Jennifer,
Peter,
and Peter.
So the 11th at 8 AM.
Yes,
Jesus Christ.
and then I'll find out from Zurian when it's. Okay, so we're all set. We'll meet you there at those times.
Kind of like how efficient that was, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That was nice. Didn't struggle with all them
And
emails.
I've been
That's
doing
one
things.
email.
Where I'm out the door at 4.
Anything else? Anything else?
I just had a sprinkler question. I've been there a bunch over the years, but are there sprinklers in all the buildings?
Correct.
In all the buildings? Okay.
All of them,
Okay,
except for the single family.
okay.
So that means there's sprinkler hookups in for every building.
There's,
involved in every section, there's a main valve, and then the tanks on the back.
there's a big tank in a building that has a sprinkler. And I just wasn't sure whether it's piped to all the different buildings, because I haven't seen all of them, so.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Abraham. Thank you, Kelly.
See you next month.
Thank you.
This
Nice.
document.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wait, don't go away. Don't go away. Go ahead.
For the public hearing.
Yes, we do.
I'll make a motion. Public hearing.
Jennifer makes the motion.
Jen?
Who seconded
I
it? David?
second.
All in favor of having the public hearing on June 23rd?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Bill, thank you, Abraham.
Thank you.
Thanks, Caleb.
Thank you, guys.
You know, I worked for a guy, an old, I mean, very,
Jennifer, you know what?
one of the best
actors.
actors.
Dude.
That's it.
Next
You
year,
had
live.
Everybody's calling it. for you.
Well, he comes up with these things, I have no, I thought I was.
Let's live by
It's
its
a
own.
video now, correct?
Yes.
It's literally what this board has to live with.
Well,
That's fine.
What's
The
that?
code enforcement officer called you a place of worship.
We have to live by that.
It's
Because that's
a
what he-
determination. You can only appeal the zoning board of appeals.
Why are you bringing that up?
Because the confusion with some of this stuff started with everybody using different use terms. Because you remember, Greg, I think the health department started with temporary residents and
I
day
agree
camp,
with- I
right?
completely agree. It's been
And
very.
temporary residents